recording. So that's how that works. So we go to item 1, apologies. From the Mayor and Councillor Fletcher for absence. I'll move those apologies.
And may I add Councillor Watson for slight lateness?
Slight Councillor Watson.
And I'm happy to second this, Chair.
Second it. Thank you, Councillor Walker. I'll put that motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declare that motion carried.
Slight.
Now go to item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? No. Next item is confirmation of minutes, item page 7. I'll move that the minutes, confirm that the minutes of the ordinary meeting of the Regional Strategy and Policy Committee held on 8th of October 2015 be a true and correct record, seconded by Councillor Penrose. I'll put that motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declare that carried. Thank you. We now move to item 4, petitions, with no petitions have been received. So we move to item 5, public input. And we do have items of public input. Is Patricia Cheel here yet? No, she's not. So our first item on the public input
It's $200, isn't it?
is the item of fluoridation of Onehunga water supply. The two presenters, the presenters Richard and Robin Northey, and then we do have Kane Titchener from Fluoride Free New Zealand, who also has asked to present as well. So morning to Robin and Richard. Thank you. You have 5 minutes, and then you'll be subject to questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have copies for the councillors of our presentation here.
Thank you.
So we've made this deputation to you, asking that you initiate appropriate action that could lead to the fluoridation of the water supply in the area of Auckland formerly administered by the Onehunga Borough Council. We've spent most of our working life in local government and health sectors. Robin's a former dental nurse and a current Auckland District Health Board elected member. We're taking this action because many of the children and adults of Onehunga, Te Papapa and Oranga, who are our neighbours, are suffering unnecessary harm to their dental and general health. This would be considerably improved if the historical accident was put behind us and our water supply was fluoridated in the same way as is 85% of all Auckland's water supply, including nearly all of the rest of the urban area. Worldwide scientific research indicates a 15% increase in the number of children with no dental decay at all as a result of fluoridation, and in Auckland an up to 40% reduction in total dental decay among 5-year-olds in fluoridated areas like Mangere and Mount Roskill compared to their neighbours in Onehunga. As the 26 June 2013 memorandum from Chief Planning Officer Roger Blakely points out that the decision to fluoridate Auckland Council's water supply rests with the governing body of the Auckland Council. It also states that the issue of fluoridation would be reviewed as part of the Water Strategic Action Plan, which was due for completion this year. However, at the end of 2014, Council decided to discontinue the Water Strategic Action Plan for cost reduction reasons. Public health is a core responsibility of councils. You act to ensure the quality and health of food, restaurants and so on, the air, pollution and water. And we're not prepared to leave the dental health of Onehunga's kids in limbo indefinitely, so we've been obliged to bring this issue to you. We've got papers of interest from the time that fluoridation of the Onehunga water supply was last formally considered by the Auckland City Council in 2001 from John Dalton, the oral health program leader at Auckland Regional Dental Services, and a paper from myself as the Auckland Councillor for the area. There was, I think, a mistake made to hold a referendum on the subject in 2001, which was lost narrowly, pretty even, lost, when a referendum should be about major constitutional issues, not scientific questions, like whether we should teach evolution or creationism in our schools. Nevertheless, the Mongakiki Community Board then unanimously supported fluoridation for their area, and the Council narrowly voted against it by a majority of 2. There's a special, I've got here, 2014 report of the Royal Society of New Zealand, which was commissioned at the request of the Auckland Council and other councils by Sir Peter Gluckman and Sir David Skegg, entitled The Health Effects of Water Fluoridation, a Review of the Scientific Evidence. Its conclusions are, quote, the World Health Organization, along with many other international health authorities, recommends fluoridation of water supplies where possible as the most effective public health measure for the prevention of dental decay. This analysis concludes that from a public health perspective, water fluoridation at the levels used in New Zealand poses no significant health risks and is effective at reducing the prevalence and severity of tooth decay in communities where it is used. Communities currently without community water fluoridation can be confident that this is a safe option that is cost-saving and of significant public health benefit, particularly in those communities with high prevalence of dental caries. We also attach here a 24 July memorandum on community water fluoridation from Dr. Julia Peters, the Clinical Director of the Auckland Regional Public Health Service. She'd wanted to join this deputation but sends her apologies, and the PowerPoint presentation that she had prepared for you with the Auckland Medical Officer of Health, Richard Hoskins, will now show on her behalf. Hopefully, yeah. So, fluoridation is effective because research shows it reduces tooth decay in children by up to 40% and in adults by up to 15%. Less tooth decay means better general health, less pain, less other infections, impaired chewing ability, tooth loss, better concentration and learning school, in general, a better start at life. Fluoridation is safe because research has shown that the only negative effect it can have is fluorosis. Some children develop what is a usually temporary mottling of their teeth in their first 8 years, particularly in areas with high natural fluoride levels in the water, or if they like swallowing fluoridated toothpaste. So at the levels that it's proposed to put in the water, it's very rare to cause fluorosis. It's normally for these other causes. The Royal Society report carefully and respectfully shows that researchers found no evidence for each and all of the any other alleged effects. It goes through cancer, IQ, bone fractures, osteoporosis, dementia, kidney disease, liver damage, autism, nor, as widely alleged during the 2000 Onehunga fluoridation referendum, homosexuality. It's affordable. The Royal Society concluded the cost of tooth decay in terms of lost years of healthy life is equivalent to 75% of that lost in New Zealand from prostate cancer. It found, quote, CWF is a cost-effective use of ratepayer funds likely to save more in dental costs that it costs to run fluoridation programs, at least in communities of 1,000 people or more. So we're not arguing for it in small rural areas, but Onehunga has got over 10,000 people. Fluoridation is equitable. Low-income people are less likely to use or to be able to afford both healthy food and fluoride toothpaste or fluoride supplements, so they'll benefit more from fluoridation and achieve more equal health outcomes. The higher income people who object to fluoridation can afford to filter it all out. So the other slides really speak, these are the leading health experts in Auckland. 40% less tooth decay. This is the Auckland organisation, 60 years of it globally, 70 years of research. This is the difference between fluoridated and non-fluoridated in the incidence of dental caries in year 8 children in New Zealand. This is the inequalities that it helps reduce. And so their role is, among others, to lead public health support, to communicate, engage with stakeholders, and to communicate that. So what possible reason is there for not fluoridating Onehunga's water? The most plausible reason is that fluoridation is compulsory mass medication, a powerful argument. However, we already accept much of this. We iodise our salt, we pasteurise our milk. And more relevant is the fact that even in Onehunga, all drinking water has chlorine added, an agent that's much more powerful and reactive than fluoride. And people can filter the fluoride out.
We're over the 5 minutes now, Richard.
Okay. So, It's not true that Onehunga has got a pure natural bore water supply. It flows under the Penrose industrial area and ends up having somewhat more dissolved impurities than the Waikato does, but it's still well within public health standards. There's a conspiracy theory that it's an industrial byproduct that's being forced on us, but it's exactly the same fluoride that occurs naturally in most natural water supplies. So it's really a question, unfortunately, comes down to inertia or political will, and that's up to you. You can't act on it immediately, but I'd ask you to take action that would seriously consider it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. I do have there's a motion that's been put up forward by Councillor Crum. But I just wondered if there's any questions from the meeting. Councillor Darby.
Richard, what evidence do you have, clinical evidence of dental caries being at a level heightened to the balance of Auckland?
I'm happy to answer that. I'm a member of the District Health Board. I'm not here as the District Health Board, but I bring my knowledge and skill from that area, as well as my years of being a school dental nurse. I get figures every month at District Health Board meetings that indicate that the figures in the non-fluoridated parts of the area, and that does include some rural parts of Rodney and Warkworth, are higher than children in comparative socioeconomic areas like Mangere or parts of Three Kings. So that's the demographic evidence, if you like. And you know, clinically, they have more filled, missing and decayed teeth. There are more total clearances where children are put under a general anaesthetic and have all their deciduous teeth removed because of dental caries and the pain, distress and ill health that's causing them. Children with decayed teeth are ingesting abscesses and the product of abscess constantly with everything they eat, and of course they don't grow and
I've got
and
that, but you don't have the clinical evidence. You're coming here with a proposition, but you don't have that clinical evidence for us. I appreciate, Robin.
I'm trying to understand what you mean by clinical evidence. What would you consider
Royal
clinical
Society's
evidence?
analysed all the worldwide studies.
I think
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
The
Councillor,
submitter has.
point of order.
What's the point of order, Councillor?
What is the point
of order?
Yeah, well, Councillor Darby is actually interrogating the.
Order.
It's a really important issue.
That's not a point of order, Councillor Quacks. I think Councillor Darby is quite entitled to ask the question and
An interrogation,
have a
Mr.
backup question to
It's an interjection,
elucidate
not
further
point of order.
information. So, Councillor, are you able to answer that further?
Well, we do have all the evidence from the Royal Society led by Sir Peter Gluckman, and you know, Julia Peters would be quite happy to provide further evidence should the council like it, and she's a clinician.
Thank you. Any
So
other
just,
questions?
I have another question. Richard, you said you acknowledged that the concentration of fluoride in water supplies is a mass medication. You acknowledge it as a mass medication.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, most people in the world get it naturally in their water supply. In New Zealand, it's low, and then you make a decision as to whether you provide it as for everyone, and then people who object to it take it out, or whether people who are desperate to get it have to get it through toothpaste and the like. And given the relative populations, the people who are likely to go to the trouble of filtering out probably are eating healthier food, but a lot of the people who otherwise are only affording unhealthy food and getting excessive dental caries. And this is a public health measure that's one of the most effective in the world for actually dealing with a public health issue.
And final question, Mr. Chair. So you have a community, many that have moved there and live in that community because of the non-fluoridated water. And you say that they can filter it out. What is the cost? What is the annual cost of using a fluoride filter? What knowledge do you have of that? And you also go on to say that the referendum can be somewhat dismissed because a referendum shouldn't be applied there. how are you reading your community in arriving here, making this recommendation, if you so easily want to dismiss a referendum, which is the democratic process?
Well, I think that, like most parts of Auckland, the opinion would be pretty evenly divided. I'm saying it's a combination of a scientific question and a moral question, and the things that are scientific questions should not be put to a referendum any more than, as I said, creationism or. And in terms of if people have moved to Onehunga to get pure water, they're getting water that is less pure than occurs in most of the rest of Auckland, because it might have started out pure in the early 19th century, but it collects all the stuff under the residential and industrial areas on its way to coming out at Onehunga.
Thank you. Mr. McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't really have a question, but I'd just like to support this presentation. In a previous job that I had, I was the manager of dental contracts in the
Well, I think there's going to be a time.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
there's gonna be a
Well, I'll
time,
leave it to
there's
them.
gonna be a
Thank you,
motion.
Mr. Chair.
Councillor Lee.
Yeah, given the arguments for and against that have been going on for years, good morning, Robin and Richard. The arguments that have been going on for years, and given Onehunga has become quite famous for its non-fluoride added water, do you not think that in terms of public health, public choice and public well-being, a referendum is something which empowers and respects the local community and enables their views to be reflected by decision makers? Would you not agree that in the end it should come down to democracy and democratic choice?
I don't see that this is, you could put 100 really important questions to people and ones on which they're likely to be better informed.
I'm just talking about fluoride.
Yes, yes.
Onehunga,
Exactly.
people know quite a lot about it.
Well, that last time a lot of people thought it caused homosexuality. I don't think they'll be used the next time that comes up, but there's less of hostility in that area. But so it's a choice, but I think
That's a wee bit dismissing.
Well,
While
no,
we're
that's
debating,
true. That was
Mr.
the big
Chairman,
pamphlet that came out at the end of the referendum, and was quite persuasive. So I think we should put more things to a referendum. I don't think this is the sort of question that's best decided by public opinion.
Okay, thank you. Just Councillor Walker.
Yeah, just have a question about the distinction between chlorine, chloride and fluoride. I mean, my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is the reason that chlorine's in the water is to meet the requirements of an act that specifies the quality of drinking water that's available at the tap by the consumer. And the purpose of the chlorine is essentially to sanitise the water. That's my understanding.
To stop us getting sick from bugs.
Conceivably, whereas my understanding is that fluoride is put in the water for health reasons.
Well, they're both health reasons.
But one is a requirement of an act, the other is not. There's a clear distinction between the two.
So you've got a choice, but they're both for health reasons. One of them is to kill the bugs, and the other one is to reduce the amount of dental decay. So they're both
different sort
public
of
health
bug.
measures.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Crum, I'll take your motion now.
Yeah, I was just seeking clarification on that, Mr. Chair, on whenabouts that. Now, are we best to address this after the next public input speaker?
No, I think
No?
we'll
Okay.
do this now.
So, if I may speak to this, Mr. Chair.
Do we have a seconder for this?
Yes,
Seconder is Councillor Cooper, okay. So the councillor, well, you'll also include that we received this presentation. That's A. B is that we request that officers report back in due course on the implications, including costs of any consultation to introduce fluoride to Anihang's water supply. And C, we request the Chair of the Committee, on behalf of the Council, write to the Minister of Health to reinforce the local government New Zealand position that fluoridation be under the jurisdiction of government. So,
Point of order, Mr Chairman.
What's the point of order?
what's the point of order?
It's the number.
We have another presenter,
Sorry.
but that's not a point of order. My
Rule it
concern,
out, rule it out.
but I'm just bringing
Ruling on
that to your
point of order,
attention.
Mr Chairman?
My concern is that I did not think it was possible to put motions such as that without a report.
Didn't worry about that in your own committee.
no.
You don't worry about that in your own committee.
Well, I think I need to...
Through you, Mr Chair, is it possible to avoid interjections?
Yes.
No.
Well, I think...
And that's not a point of order either, it's your chairmanship, sir.
Yeah, okay. I think that it's, the second part is, I'm happy about that. The point that you make, I do have a concern about the third part in relation to the writing to the Minister of Local Government, because we haven't really, there's no paper on that, so...
If I could speak to those.
Well, you can speak to me in relation to part C as to how I'm going to justify including that in the motion.
Point of order, Mr
Through
Chair.
you, Mr Chair, I haven't finished with my point of order.
What is the point of order?
point of order? And I'd seek advice from the officers, because we as councillors have been directed with some stringency that we should not be asking for reports willy-nilly, certainly on the basis of presentations alone.
Inundation.
Now, that's the...
Yes, what, sorry?
Really, it's becoming impossible to speak in this chamber, Mr Chairman, because of constant interjections.
Yeah, if you just let Councillor Walker...
I was just asking
Yeah.
for an opinion from an officer around this matter, because that is the directive I understand that we've been given as councillors.
Okay, well, we'll take the point you make. We will leave this on the table, and we will hear the next presenter, and then we'll come back to this. Okay? I'm sorry. Thank you, Richard, and we'll include thanks to you,
Thank you.
in the motion. Thank you for coming in. Okay. We'll now ask Mr. Titchener, Kane Titchener, to come forward and speak. Thank you. And as I said to the other presenters, you have 5 minutes.
Thanks, so that's 15, is it? Thanks. Look, you don't bring a pea shooter to a water fight. I've got the clinical evidence from 2009. There's no difference in caries between fluoridated and non-fluoridated areas, but there is an increase in dental fluorosis. So I'll just leave this here. I'll send this all to you if you'd like. Good morning, councillors and Māori board members. I would like to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. What I would like to share is that what is used to fluoridate is not pharmaceutical grade fluoride. The US Public Health Service and Ministry of Health optimal target concentrations are not in alignment, and there is real evidence of harm. Oh, pointless. Someone give me some guidance. Someone give me some guidance here. Can someone give me some guidance?
It should go.
It's not going.
Yep, that's what I'm doing. Here we go. Fluoridation began in the swinging 60s when Formica was all the rage, asbestos was freely used, and dentists and doctors still advocated the use of cigarettes to calm the nerves. Could the science have changed? According to Watercare, 700 tonne of hazardous fluoride is added to Auckland's shared public water supply annually. Since that's 50 years, that's 30,000 tonne. The source of fluoride used to fluoridate is not pharmaceutical grade fluoride. This is directly from the Water New Zealand Good Practice Guide. Hydrofluorosilicic acid is produced as a co-product of the manufacture of the phosphate fertiliser process. There's no conspiracy about this, and this is completely agreed with the Ministry of Health. The Ministry of Health can spin it whichever way they like, but this is a hazardous acid. Last month, a $2 billion settlement was reached between the US Environmental Protection Agency and the Mosaic Fertiliser Company. The EPA accused the Mosaic Company of improper storage and disposal of waste. This is the acid that is being added to the water supply. Onianga has never been fluoridated. A referendum in 2001 returned 66% of voters opposed to fluoridation. At the time, Metro Water was actually contacting 2,000 households if there was going to be an exposure to fluoridated water from a planned maintenance shutdown. Please see the press release that I've handed out to you from the US Public Health Service. In April 2015, I contacted all councillors about the new US recommended single target of 0.7 part per million. The Ministry of Health official story is that Auckland Council is altering the levels to the optimal level. So the optimal level apparently isn't as optimal as first thought. Is it 0.7? Is it 0.8? Is it 0.9? Or is it 1 part per million? Well, according to the US, it is a single target of 0.7 parts per million. Please now see the OIA response from Peter Dunn that I've also handed out. What is the Ministry of Health's rationale to continue the range of 0.7 to 1 part per million? Now, all the focus is on concentration, but the fact is, it is the dose and the dosage that is important. How much are individuals consuming, and what is the size of those individuals? If you look at the bottle on the left on the screen there, you've got pharmacy-grade fluoride made from fluoride tablets, which you can buy for $12. This is dissolvable, and it says, do not use in a fluoridated area. The warning labels on this bottle, if you mix this to 1 litre, it says pregnant women should drink nil, children under 3 should drink nil. There are maximum requirements up to an adult. Adults should only be drinking 1 litre of this pharmacy-grade fluoride. If you look at Auckland's fluoridated water, that's your water that you're fluoridating, there are no limits at all. Chemically, it's exactly the same. We've sent this to the Ministry of Health for a please explain, and they can't come back with an answer. Fluoride dose, this is really important as well. Breastfed babies are receiving 0.004 part per million. Nothing. Bottled fed babies, that's infant formula and Auckland fluoridated water, 200 times more fluoride. Hypothyroidism. Earlier this year, this peer-reviewed study on thyroid function and fluoridation was published. It showed a 30% increase in the underactive thyroid function for women at 0.3 part per million and a 60% increase in underactive thyroid function at 0.7 part per million. Again, we fluoridate at a range of 0.7 to 1 part per million. The Ministry of Health, under an OIA, have said they have not completed any original studies of fluoridated water and thyroid function. This is who you're taking your guidance off. So I'm asking you to request the CEO of Watercare to reduce the target level to 0.7 parts per million. Forget this silly idea to have a referendum in Onianga, because the people of Onianga know about fluoride. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions, Mr. Titchner? Councillor Walker?
Could you provide us with the links to the information sources that you've described?
Absolutely,
Kane?
yes, absolutely.
And I would hope that our officers pick up on those if there is to be any reporting on the subject.
We've already had that information.
Thank you, Mr. Titchner.
Or just-
Oh,
Have a
Councillor
question?
Dunn?
Question?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Titchener. I'm just, a lot of the information, or most of the information I've received from you, I've always got the impression you were against fluoridation, but you just said in your presentation that you wanted us to request Watercare reduce the amount of fluoride. So you're okay with fluoride as long as it's at a level that you
I'd like you
feel
to end,
is...
I'd like you to end fluoridation right now, to put a call through and just tell them to turn the tap off. But what I'm saying is, why are we not following the US example and reducing our fluoride levels to 0.7 part per million.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Darby?
So just following that, that's your main request here, other than to follow the 2001 referendum where 66% opposed fluoridation and only hung a not 50-50. So just in terms of that 0.7, I've read the information that's come out of the Public Health Service where they have instructed all authorities in the US.
What they've done is they've given a recommendation. So water utilities can take this up, but if it's a recommendation, because of the higher level, there's 40% incidence of dental fluorosis in the US, okay? Now, unlike Richard, I've got concerns about dental fluorosis. It costs thousands of dollars to fix. Now, if this was ever to become a bigger issue, the legal liability on dental fluorosis alone is massive.
Okay, so I spoke to Mr. Ravine at a meeting recently about this recommendation of the American Public Health Service, which has not been picked up here, though my understanding is that the Ministry of Health in New Zealand is required to be in a constant review of the literature, but they haven't got around to that at this stage in New Zealand. But Mr. Ravine said there's to me, it's something that they could consider, and this is just very informal, but he said that they have a minimum requirement of 0.7, and that one of the risks for them is if their concentration added to the water is at 0.7 only, they could fall below. Yep. So would you be willing for a range that is 0.7 to, I don't know, 0.75 or whatever is reasonable to protect their responsibility to meet the 0.7 standard?
So we need to reduce it as much as possible, whatever, within the ranges to try and pull that down. So there's a huge difference between 1 part per million and 0.7 part per million. There's not a big difference between 0.7 and 0.75. I agree, yeah.
Councillor Walker, you have another question?
Yeah, it's just further to the question that Councillor Darby raised. My understanding is that fluoride's quite different to chlorine. Chlorine's lost because it actively scavenges bugs and the like, and effectively it dissipates. Fluoride, on the other hand, I think is relatively stable, isn't it?
So when
is it not possible to have a very accurate dose of fluoride in the water, which is what they're doing in the US? Is that not possible?
I mean that's the only good thing that they can do with fluoridation is actually get the concentration quite correct. So I'll just pick up on the dose concentration. The concentration is what they put in the water. The dose is what people are drinking, and individual responses are not being monitored on that.
Thank you. Other questions?
Yeah.
Councillor Cashmore.
It's one thing I haven't looked at or considered, and it's just come to me. So fluoride is a extract from the fertiliser manufacturing process. Does the quality, degree of efficacy of the fluoride vary from the sources of that fertiliser? If it's phosphate, is it different? If it's Nauru, different from RPR from Satura or something like that? So is the American phosphate manufacturing process delivering a different fluoride, say, to the New Zealand one? That's what I'm asking.
The different companies have got different levels of fluoride. They've also taken it from the aluminium smelters. So they've got a bit of uranium and iridium in there as well. So, and also lead. So they're only very small amounts, but they're still in there depending on where you source it from. And that's what you're putting in the water.
So potentially the 0.07 or whatever it was would have variances depending on the nationality and of source of the fluoride.
The concentration would be the same, so they can pull that out. So in the process of the hydrofluorosilicic acid, the only refinement is removing the silica. That's the only refinement. Then they get the concentration at that level, and then they put the concentration through.
Thank you. Other questions? We'll go back to...
Can I just ask a question of Mr. Kimpton at this stage?
Yes.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Kimpton, we've got two presentations here, and they're in parts. One presentation is asking for us to make a decision to fluoride water, and the other is saying don't do that, and there's various arguments there. And then there's a third request for this body to ask some questions of Watercare around that 0.7 to 0.1 range. I'm not one to put up motions and just seek another body of reports, and I really want some guidance from you here as an executive officer on how we could intelligently approach this without just reactive on the day, and to be informed in our decision making, because there's various arguments being put here.
Certainly. So what I suggest is that, and I've talked to the Chief Executive of Watercare this morning as well. So as an information paper, I think Watercare would be agreeable to providing us background as to the current fluoridation process and how they manage the concentration of fluoride added to the water. So that would give you context around both the maybe to source, but also how they handle where they sit within that range. Ravine passed comments similar to me that he did to you, that they try and keep it to the low end of the range. So that would be for information, and that may be useful for you in terms of all understanding current practice. You've also got before you two or proposed resolutions. One talks to whether you would support consultation with the local community, and the other one has been modified slightly, and it talks to whether there's an opportunity for you to request an update on whether the Director General of Health is going to make decisions around fluoride at the New Zealand level as opposed to the local council level, and that was the remit of Local Government New Zealand. So I suspect those three things don't require the first one is a for information report. The second one would be a letter to the Minister of Health and the Director General of Health. The third one is whether you wish to engage and consult with the community around a change to the Onehunga water supply, and that's probably where I'd put my focus.
Okay, Councillor Quacks, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, to the officers, given the remit of the Local Government New Zealand, this appears to me to be a central government issue, not a local government issue. Just some advice on that, please. And I know we've had this debate before, and it seems to be, look, deja vu all over again with this. Seems to be like Groundhog Day, because we've had this argument, we've had reports. So let's have.
So currently it is a local government issue. The request of Local Government New Zealand is that it becomes a central government issue, and central government hasn't made that decision yet. D, I misquoted the clause because it's changed. D is a request that we get an update on that decision, whether it's going to be made or not. But currently it is your responsibility.
Okay. Councillor Lee?
Just a question, and I don't need the answer straight away, but it would be interesting to know who supplies fluoride, bulk fluoride, and how much it costs.
That's Exxon, and it's 200,000.
So my
Exxon.
apologies. My recommendation is that we get a for information report from Watercare around this particular issue, and let's get the facts.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Mr. Titchener. Much appreciate it coming in. Thank you.
So can we add that to the motion then? That I mean, does that get wrapped into the C, Mr. Kimpton?
Yeah.
I think, Elaine, that information report that you've inserted into C is its own, is that an E in regards to Watercare coming back on the 0.7 issue?
Yeah, I would recommend that you separate the two out, because one, and see that makes them both a requirement and they can be independent of each other. So I'd make a request for a for information report on fluoride treatment as currently practiced by Watercare as an item in its own right.
We'll put that as an E, okay?
Yep.
So on the, can I?
Sorry, Councillor Darby.
Sorry, Chair. So just on the C, The mover and seconder have got at the moment, including costs of any consultation. It's only about an information report in due course on the costs of any consultation. It actually doesn't invite any information about the costs and benefits of the fluoridation as proposed. Is it your intention to actually seek information on more than just
We've had plenty of information.
on consultation? Is the other mover and seconder interested in the costs and benefits?
No, we've had so much information,
Okay,
Mr Chair,
councillor,
over the years.
you had a question?
I did have a question. I just wondered, what I heard Mr and Mrs Northey saying was they gave us a presentation for the fluoridation of the Onehunga water supply, not on it. It wasn't neutral, and I think given that the second one was against, I think we need to be clearly state, and if I'm seeing Robin nodding there, I think it meant to be very clear why they were here. They want fluoridation in the Onehunga water supply. So is that okay with the mover that we change it for the fluoridation?
No, you don't
Councillor
say.
Crum?
Yes, that's fine with me.
Thank you.
Well, sorry, Mr Chair.
Jono,
The B is not clear either.
Stop, councillor Darby. Can you just tell me where that change was going to occur?
It's just an A, after Robin Northey,
Oh, yeah,
it was
okay,
on
yeah.
the fluoridation, and I was just...
Four, okay,
Four,
four.
yeah, I just wanted to be clear their position.
Yeah, okay, that's fair enough. Councillor Darby, do you have a point you wish to?
Mr Titchener came here to speak about two items, the non-fluoridation of the water supply and reducing the concentration levels in Auckland's water supply.
Mr Chairman,
To
point of order,
0.7.
Mr Chairman. Councillor Crum and I moved and seconded this.
No,
And I feel like this is just
come on, you're being...
dodging around with
I don't
our motion to get it more to how Councillor Darby wants it, rather than just, we've put this in and seconded it, and by stealth, he's changing it, but it's not his motion.
Well, can we change it? Can we, to get some kind of...
I don't think the word
Collegial-
stealth, I don't think the word stealth when somebody speaks publicly is quite appropriate.
How about I just speak to
I wasn't
it and we
Against the
carry on?
fluoridation-
Point of order for
no, no,
clarification.
order. I'm
Point of
speaking.
order for clarification.
Just hold it.
Can I speak to
No.
the motion
Can I
for
just,
which?
no, I just want to, I'm chairing this meeting, please. So, just wait. Can we say that against the fluoridation, and B, against the fluoridation of Onehunga's water supply and the points raised in the presentation attached to the minutes? Does that clarify that?
Well, then we would do it in A as well, wouldn't we?
Might as well do that in A as well, because
Oh, well, we'll
the
do that
Northeast
for
had
A
a
as
presentation
well.
as well.
Okay, we'll do that for A as
Be
well.
fair here.
Happy with that? So
Not sure about happy, but let's accept and move on.
It's been moved and seconded now. Are there any speakers to it?
Yes,
Yes, okay.
but surprisingly
Crum.
there are.
I don't have a major, this is just in relation to receiving the submissions and requesting further information. So let's not have a major debate on
No,
fluoridation,
I'll
not
be brief,
fluoridation.
Mr
All right?
Chair.
Thank you.
So in relation to point C, I don't think it's accurate from a previous speaker to say that Onehunga's public know everything about the issue. That close vote by committee, which was just lost by one after a consultation or referendum that had a 34% turnout rate, was back in 2001. That's many years ago. So what I'm trying to do with C here is to acknowledge that there is in fact a case for us discovering what it would take to find out more information on the introduction of fluoridation to Onehunga's water supply. In D, Dean's already mentioned it, but we supported the remit at a local government conference last year. So we were signatories, if you will, to asking that this issue be squarely taken over by central government. I've talked to Local Government New Zealand in the last 24 hours and they assure me that it is active. This issue is active with the Associate Minister of Health, Peter Dunn, and they are hopeful, is the term used, hopeful for progress on this matter. It's a New Zealand public health issue. So Auckland's public health issues are no different to Greymouth's, Christchurch's, Dunedin's, Hamilton's, and I say Hamilton with a smile, knowing what they've gone through in terms of the fluoridation debate, on again, off again, on again. And we need to, I think, squarely pull in behind D and remind the government of what... actually, I wasn't at the Local Government New Zealand conference in 2014, but for those who were, it must have been a very strong vote. My recollection of wording is strongly in favour. All those who contributed to that particular remit. I also think that it's time. We were sent an email, Mr. Kimpton, reminding us of Dr. Blakely's paper on our current council position. So I think what's missing here, but I really don't think we need an F, is a reminder to ourselves on our current council position in regards to fluoridation and some of the information that Dr. Blakely has furnished us with. Maybe that can come back at a future committee in conjunction with E when we hear back from Watercare. I know that we've been sent the email, but I doubt that anyone read that in the last 12 hours or so. So I would like to request that the committee support A through E.
Thank you. Councillor Lee.
Mr. Chairman, I wish to record my vote against D, and I oppose this for two reasons. First of all, if the Onehunga Borough Council and the old legacy boroughs could make decisions, had the gumption to make a decision for or against fluoridation on the basis of their community wishes, I can't see any reason why the super city should pass the buck to central government on these sorts of decisions. All sorts of powers have been abrogated to the central government, and I believe that we should and are competent to make these sorts of decisions, just as the old boroughs were able to. The other reason why I oppose this is that it takes away community choice. Everything goes to a centralised authority which imposes its will on the communities across the country. So no, I'm quite happy with the resolutions, but I reject this option or this recommendation, which really means take the responsibility away from us. We're not big enough. Well, that's wrong.
Thank you. Right, I'll take the vote. Sorry, Councillor Dunn.
Thank you, Chair. So, like the earlier speaker, Councillor Lee, I have great concern about D. But I want to go back to some of the information that we've been presented with here today. We were told the referendum was pretty close. Then the next speaker says, no, it was 66%. Big difference. Councillor Crum says that it was only a 34% turnout. I'd just like to remind us that we should not be invalidating our own positions here, and we all got about, in our vote, a 34% turnout.
Not Waitemataran Golf.
So that was the vote. It was a referendum, and if there was a 34% turnout, that be the result, 66%. Just like the result of the 34% turnout across Auckland, I think it was about that, got us here. Are our positions invalid? Is the referendum invalid? No, it's not. Neither are invalid. You can't dismiss it. That was a democratic response. I've heard some suggestion from the first presenter here today that the democratic process has no place here. Now, that really does surprise me, and particularly coming from that individual who we all know well. I thought was really one who would always be standing up for the democratic process. The Ministry of Health has been pushing behind the scenes to ensure that councils some of these councils are participating far too much in this decision-making around fluoride around New Zealand, and it's rather inconvenient of them, and so they have managed to get Local Government New Zealand on their side to try and shift it to the government decision-making responsibility only. It is a responsibility of unitary councils, district councils, city councils all around this nation to make this call, not the government. And that's why the government is not moving on this. And if you look at the website, it is saying that it is a city unitary district council responsibility. I'm going to take the other request, and it is really disappointing that the mover and seconder don't even want to acknowledge in the B the point of the presentation made by Mr. Titchener here today in terms of the 0.7.1 range. Critical issue, but don't want to even record it in that. Willing to record Mr. Northey's, and that's fine, I support that, but not prepared to record Mr. Titchener's presentation in full. And that says a lot, members. That says, I don't really want to know about it. I don't want to know about him, even though he is the one that is citing the clinical evidence here and no one else is. There has been no other clinical evidence tabled here today other than by Mr. Titchener. This is an issue that's not going to go away, Mr. Chair. It will come back again, and I'm happy to see the information report rather than a full-blown report from Watercare on this, and hopefully we can move towards being within the Ministry of Health guidelines by a 0.7 to 0.75% concentration rate in our water. I think the people of Onehunga will rise up on this at any suggestion that any representative from any of their political representatives, current or former, might be ignoring them in the decision-making on fluoridating water.
Thank you. I'm going to take the vote. I'm going to take the vote.
Question. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, and I'm...
No, Councillor Walker, you got a question?
Why don't we just take them all separately, so you can vote how you want?
Yes, question?
Sure. Just going to part C.
questions.
And that essentially follows on from the comments that Councillor Darby was making. So this is about a report on the implications.
What's the question?
Well, if you give me a chance, I'll ask the question, Mr. Chair.
It's gone on for an hour.
One of the implications that we've had brought to our attention is around the risks that apply to adding fluoride to the water. In particular, the risk attached to legal challenges. And it was pointed out to us that there's been a recent case in the United States involving the use of fluoride in the water and issues around fluorosis.
Point of order,
the cost
to relevance.
I'll ask, come to the point.
So
can you come to the point of the question?
My question is, how comprehensive is any report going to be?
We haven't got across.
And that is a question to the officers, because if it's just going to be...
No, come on, you've asked the question. Let the officer answer it, please.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
I think we're seeing the impact of tank water, Mr. Chairman.
Keep them away from my water tanks, please.
Can you please withdraw that and apologise to the...
Sorry. I'll withdraw and apologise to my friend.
I didn't actually hear it.
Yeah, there you go. On the hearing as well.
Mr. Chair, let's take C and D separately.
No, can we just have Mr. Timpson's answer?
In August last year, you received a comprehensive report from the Chief Scientific Advisor to the Prime Minister, commissioned largely by Auckland Council in partnership with a range of others, that have addressed in a comprehensive fashion, I think, a number of the issues that you're talking about now. So my recommendation is you go back and you read that, you understand what was covered, what was addressed. I'm not sure whether there's a lot more that we can add at this stage, so I'm not recommending any further reports. You have the essence of it. And so you just go back and you read that, make yourself familiar with it. I don't recommend any further debate at this stage. If you're dissatisfied with it, then you'll bring that as a further recommendation into the policy program. But remember, there's also a decision which you made not to pursue this further in terms of that water supply strategy. So you're going to have to just think carefully about where you want your policy program focused, and then make a collective decision at this committee of the whole in that regard.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper. do you have-
Question, sorry, just in response to councillor Darby's comments that we don't care.
No, have you got a question?
Well, the
Please
question
ask
is,
the question.
I understood that when we talked about adding the points raised in the presentation, that we were putting the request by Mr Titchener around changing in the level of fluoridation. Was I mistaken?
Oh, can you answer that?
So in item E, my...
Just as a receipt of that's what
Oh,
he was
no,
asking.
can you let her
Sorry,
answer?
I'm just
So my
clarifying.
expectation of E was that we were requesting of Watercare to provide us feedback on their
Sorry, I'm
current...
talking about B.
Oh, B.
B. C. Just B. That's because we were just told that weren't interested in putting that in there, and I thought that was my understanding that we were going to,
It
when we
is in
put
there.
points raised in the presentation, we were already.
Okay, it is in there. It's in there. Thank you.
Mr Chair, I ask that we go to the vote and that we
No.
take C and D separately, and if you vote for
Yes,
C,
well,
then
well,
you're
I'll-
looking at a
I'll-
forward
no,
programme. If you
Councillor
vote for
Crum,
D...
Councillor Crum, just wait, please, because Councillor Webster had a question.
Yes, thank you. This debate's gone on for an hour, which is what happens. Look, I would like to vote against C. I think that we should be careful about, asking for more reports, and if we do it for only Hunga, we'll get asked to do it for everywhere else. And can I remind councillors that actually Auckland supported at the local government conference the remit that went forward, because councils are really struggling with the pros and cons of this in light of the health issues. So I just want to remind councillors that Auckland voted for that remit as part of Local Government New Zealand. So I'd like to vote against C, thank you.
Okay, well, we're going to take the vote.
Take C
We'll
and D separately.
We'll take A and B. I'll put those two, A and B. Those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declare those carried. Now we go to C.
Division, please.
C.
Councillor Nye? Yes. Councillor Brewer?
No.
Councillor Casey?
Yes.
Councillor Cashmore?
No.
Councillor Clow?
No.
Councillor Cooper?
No.
Councillor Darby?
No.
Councillor Filipina? For. Deputy Mayor Hulse?
No.
Councillor Crum?
For.
Councillor Lee?
No.
Member McDonald?
No.
Councillor Penrose?
No.
Councillor Quacks?
No.
Councillor Stewart?
No.
Councillor Sir John Walker?
No.
Councillor Walker?
No.
I think it is.
Councillor Watson?
No.
Councillor Webster?
No.
Member Wilcox?
No. That part C is lost. So now we go to D. I'll put D. Those in favour?
Aye.
Against?
No. No.
I hear that carried on the voices.
Recorded.
So we don't want to request an update.
So if you want to vote against, recorded.
Yes.
Yep.
Councillors Darby, Wayne Walker, John Watson, Casey. Yeah. And then we go to E. This is requesting that the staff provide information report on fluoride treatment as currently practiced by Watercare. I'll put that. Those in favour? Aye. Against? Declare that carried. Thank you. So now we go to item 6. Yeah, Patricia Cheel. Is Patricia Cheel here at all? No, she's not. Okay, we go to local board input. Mr Haynes is going to come up at the time when we deal with the swing bill submission. So now we go to extraordinary business. I want to move that we have an item of extraordinary business in relation to how Auckland Council handled, well, Councillor Nye was going to second that.
So I don't even know what it
How
is.
we've been handling the issue of solid waste and the public concerns that have been raised in recent weeks concerning the the issue at, in South Auckland with the rubbish pile that was accumulated, and also the fact that inorganic rubbish has been severely delayed in collection on the North Shore. So I've asked the officers to come along so we can get a formal explanation so that everybody's on the same page in relation to these two items. So the officers, put the motion that we go have an extraordinary item of business. I'll put that item. Those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declare that carried. Now I'm going to move an item that this made me come up with the order of precedence to be dealt with now. So I'll put that motion, seconded by Councillor Anai, that this matter be handled immediately. I'll put that. Those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declare that carried. So we'll ask the officers to come forward, and they know the issues and they can give us an explanation. And it's not an item that we're going to get into debate over. It's an item that we can ask some questions and then we'll move on. So thank you, Mr. Drusevich, and you introduce your team, please.
Yep, through the chair to my right, Ian Stubble, Waste Solutions Manager, and to my further right, Merrily, who is our comms advisor, embedded comms advisor in Waste Solutions. And through the chair, we have just a short number of overheads that we can quickly go through that will give you a sense of the issue and the response.
Through the chair, if I can just start with Robertson Road. So this was a large illegal dumping pile that appeared over last week. I think historically there've been some issues where smaller piles have been cleared by Housing New Zealand. So all of this is Housing New Zealand land, and as you're probably aware, it is the landowner's responsibility to protect their property and to clear illegal dumping. So Housing New Zealand accepted their accountability and cleared the pile. Clearly it did get a lot of media interest. We as a council team quickly offered our assistance with either providing public notices, enforcement notices or CCTV. And although Housing New Zealand didn't initially take up that offer, we are working with them and we are looking to get cameras up over the next few days. One of the local residents actually recorded the registration numbers of a number of vehicles that did tip, because it wasn't local residents. Housing New Zealand were very clear about that. It was people coming in from outside. And we sought permission from Housing New Zealand to follow up on those number plates, and we ended up issuing so far 15 infringement notices.
Anything happening? No? Okay.
Yep. So actually, what this map shows, if you look at the picture of the bin, that's where Robertson Road is. When we've tracked the registration plates, these are the locations of those vehicle owners, and you'll see that even the crosses close by are K away, but the ones obviously top right is Mount Wellington, and then towards the right you've got Flatbush, East Tamaki. There are actually others outside of this as well. There's 4 or 5 outside of this. So it's clearly not local residents, it's people coming in from outside. The type of material, looking at the pile, it's a lot of it is waste that would come out of households, so mattresses and sofas, but also there was a lot of black bag waste, some asbestos in there, tyres and building rubble. So there's quite a lot of commercial dumping as well. So our policy as a council, if we get illegal dumping on our land, we seek to obviously identify the culprits as soon as possible, try and address any hotspots through notices, working with residents or using CCTV. But also we aim to clear the pile as soon as possible as well. So it's similar to graffiti, that I think the quicker we clear it, then the less likelihood there is of others adding to it. We are doing quite a lot of communications. It's probably an area where we can never probably do enough to really try and reinforce the unacceptable behaviour, and we're looking to do an awareness campaign over the coming months to highlight that even more, and particularly encouraging residents to report any incidences so that we can follow up, but also to get the message across that we will enforce and fine if we find culprits. For Robertson Road, we've been working with the Southern Local Boards. We met with them this week, and we're meeting with them in a few weeks to talk about inorganics and how we can communicate that. But they're fully aware about the messages that we're trying to get across. And we're also doing a lot of work across the south, not just in this particular case, but around changes for the waste plan to try and obviously encourage the community to come on board with the changes that are coming. Just as sorry, I'm not sure what happened there. So it probably leads on to the inorganic service actually. Just in the south, volumes of illegal dumping have reduced by 58% over the last 3 months. We've also changed the inorganic process, and inorganics is coming in the south from February next year, but you'll be aware that we've started the service in the northwest, so Legacy, Rodney, North Shore and Waitakere. And this is just a quick snapshot of some of the changes that we're seeing already on the street.
Gee, it looks familiar. It's been the town hall, did it?
So there's a lot of communication and awareness that's been going on, but if you look at the middle picture on the top, that's the type of pile that's being presented compared to obviously what we were experiencing in the old inorganic where it was put on the berm. So the new system is booked on property and we collect on property. And the 3 pictures at the bottom are the material that's being pulled out already as far as the resource recovery. So you probably can't see it so clearly there, but really good quality material which is going off to charities and community enterprises.
Excellent.
Sorry, I've got... so just to clarify with that, in the first phase, we've got 50,000 properties that we're dealing with. We've taken 6,000 properties so far, which is around 16%. As I said about the pictures, 40% of that material has been recovered, which equates to about 200 tonnes. One of those materials were TVs, so historically about 1,000 TVs would have ended up on the berm, smashed up in landfill. They're all now being recovered and recycled. Generally, the feedback has been really positive on the inorganics, and the lessons learned from this first phase will be used for the next phase, phase 2, as we roll out across the whole region from February next year. Do you want me to pause and take questions before I go on to this?
No, we'll go right through, I think, and make them cover a lot.
Okay. So the next issue that you raised, Chair, was around the waste collection issues that we've been experiencing recently on the North Shore and Waitakere. So Onyx or Veolia, the parent group, have clearly not been performing to the standards that we would expect. It is unacceptable and it's causing significant customer dissatisfaction in those areas. We have still a few hot spots, but generally the refuse and the wheel bin recycling collections are back on track. The big issue that we still have is the paper and card collections, which are collected separately in North Shore and Waitakere. And probably hasn't been helped the last week or so with Labour weekend last week, where we were already a day behind. Issues with vehicles and staffing from Onyx have meant that those rounds have been delayed even further and gone into this week, and therefore it's a case of catch-up. We are confident that the contractor working with us, has a plan in place. We have intervene by getting additional contractors, third-party contractors in, including our own city park services, to assist, and we are confident that they will be up to speed by the end of this week, and we will start next week as normal. Through our comms, we clearly continue to put the message out that we are obviously trying to work the best we can with our contractor, and clearly apologise for the inconvenience and the stress that it's causing. Just as a note as well, council will be recovering any additional costs that come out of this, so it won't sit with the ratepayer, it will sit with the contractor.
Through the Chair, although we've had some concerning noise from our community, we've also contemporaneously had a significant amount of positive commentary as well. I just thought, take this opportunity to quickly point it out. The regional bag, one bag, one price, has commenced on the 1st of November. A significant positive feedback on that, because there's effectively either neutral or winners with our community. The marketing campaign has also been successful, but we also had a response from the Rodney local board with a response from their community to them as to whether council can enter the legacy Rodney market sooner rather than later. There has been, obviously, over the last few years, some lobbying by the existing incumbent who has told us that they will lower their price to compete with us. So if we enter, the community wins two ways, from our cheaper bag price and the contractor driving their price current to the community to be competitive, or certainly to undercut us. So either way, it's a win-win for the community once we do enter the market. We are looking at that issue at the moment. Through the Chair, that's the end of our presentation.
Thank you. Councillor Alf Filipina.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to acknowledge, in regards to Robertson Road, I want to acknowledge the role of the local board, because I know that the local board have been contacting Waste Unit as well as Housing New Zealand. So I want to acknowledge their role. I spoke to Jez Johns, who is the Communications Manager for Housing New Zealand, as a result of getting asked by the local board to see what could happen. And I just want to acknowledge them as well, because I then rang Ian. And Ian, the only issue for us was around the communication with Waste as well, and with both the councils in the area. But it appears to, at least now, through you, Chair, settled. And I mean, the fact that 15 infringements, and I think most of them are from Manurewa, I think.
That's because you get rid of all your stuff.
I think most of them from Manurewa, from where Councillor Callum lives. So, again, the fact that we've done this and we've put a lid on it at this stage is good, so just want to compliment them. Thank you.
Councillor Casey.
Yeah, I've got two questions. My first is, you know, all these cars that came and dumped on Robertson Road, what happens in terms of the penalty? What's the penalty? What are we doing with it?
So we issue, well, there are a number of things that we can do, but as a council we have to get permission of the landowner, because it's obviously material that was dumped on their private property, which we got. So if we've got a witness statement, we write to the owner of that vehicle and issue them a penalty notice, which is a $400 fine. We then wait for their response, and we've had some responses back already where people have admitted that it was them, and they will pay. If there are issues about, well, it wasn't me, or I contest that, then we go through a process around gathering evidence and I suppose how easy it is to recover that. We have provided, or we will provide that information to Housing New Zealand as well, because ultimately they can try and recover the costs of the clearance as well. So we have worked very closely with Housing New Zealand to see how we can work together to a number of things, to obviously to fine, to recover costs, but also to prevent it happening again.
Thank you. Councillor Wayne.
Two questions, sorry,
Oh.
Mr Chairman. My second was, I've just been looking at the orange bag site, and I just have a concern. When we use our wheelie bins, you're not allowed to put garden refuse or building material in the bin. But according to the orange bag website, it can have garden garbage, building material and junk. I didn't think we were mixing.
Through the chair, I'd have to follow up on that. No,
No, just,
okay.
I thought we had to
Well,
keep
can
it
you
a
follow up
secret.
and come back to Councillor Casey?
Thank you.
Maybe if you let all the people from or the committee members know what that answer is, because it's an important answer. Good question. Councillor Wayne Walker.
Sure. Couple of questions. The first one just goes to the paper and card collections, especially on the North Shore and that vicinity. There are a number of disgruntled people there that have been quite upset. I've certainly heard of instances where the comments that they've had have been somewhat abusive from the contractors. This is not council, this is the contractors. And certainly those people that have rung the council have found it quite difficult to know what's going on. Obviously on their part, they're putting the material out with the expectation that it's going to be picked up at a certain time. It doesn't get picked up, then it blows around, then they have to pick it up if it's littering the place. So I've got a question around communication and can we do it better so that people know what's going on?
I don't agree with that.
Because they want to know, obviously, when it is going to be sorted. The other question that I've got that also goes to communication, and it's further to the question that Councillor Casey was raising was the issue around penalties and so on, and how well we're communicating that so that we're putting a strong message to people that if you do this, we're going to come and get you, and it's going to cost you, and you shouldn't be doing it. So, two questions on communication.
Okay. So just to let you know that a media release has gone out today to local media in Waitakere and North Shore about the delays in pickups for recycling and paper and cardboard. And we've let people know that we expect to fix the problems from next week. In terms of illegal dumping, we are looking at getting into a campaign. We've already started putting information on our Auckland news site. We've already put out media releases and that'll be continuing. We're a little bit quiet this week because if it isn't related to the All Blacks, they probably won't publish it. But from next week, we've certainly got material lined up and we intend to be having a marketing campaign as well. We're preparing a brief for our agency and you can expect to see that in the next few months as well.
And
ongoing.
Just two.
No, come on.
This just goes to this question, Mr. Chair. So
well, we don't want statements, Councillor Walker.
It's not a statement.
Well,
it's a question.
It's a very long
It's
question.
a question.
We'll make it a very quick question.
So is the communication also extending to the people in our call centre and the contractors?
Yes, we've got pretty good relationships with customer services. As soon as we have a media release going out, it goes into our contacts in the call centre and it goes on their notification system.
Thank you. Councillor Watson.
Yeah, just thanks. I mean, just a question with regards the communications with the letter that goes out beforehand. What's I've just had a couple of complaints from people that they didn't get one, and then secondly, and that may have been addressed where they have got one, and then they've gone into book, but a red alert's come up and said, you know, it's too early, even though they've told it was okay. Could you give us a little bit of feedback on those issues?
So this refers, sorry, through the chair, this refers to the inorganic service?
Inorganic,
yeah,
yes.
Yeah. We recognise there have been issues with leaflet drops. They've been in very small isolated areas. When a customer who could have had a collection has maybe missed the timing and been locked out of the system, then we have dealt with those as late bookings.
Okay, so if someone is totally adamant that, you know, that they didn't receive the letter, then there is provision for a pickup to be made.
Through the chair, yes, we have done our utmost to try and accommodate all residents. So how the booking system works is that you book a few weeks in advance, we then plan the routes, and then we're in at a particular area. If we can capture that customer and deal with that late booking, either just before or while they're in the area, we will honour that collection.
Okay, great. So just a final question, Mr. Chair, then is, so if you're in an area like the North Shore, which is quite, or any other part of Auckland for that matter, but they are there, then that possibility exists. It doesn't have to be just the immediately adjacent suburb if they're in that rough area.
Through the chair, I think it's probably a case-by-case situation. We are clearly aiming to be as customer-focused as possible, and if we can accommodate the customer, then we will. There is the practicality of these trucks are in a particular area at a particular time and only can do a certain amount of properties. So it's how much resource we've got to accommodate that. At the moment, we have dealt with every late booking that's come in.
Thank you. Councillor Webster.
Yes, thank you. This is very timely, actually. I'm surprised, John, that the Rodney people have been asking for to come on board earlier, because Mike and I've had huge problems with rubbish in that area. And Ian, I think we've got to be careful when you talk about Rodney for the recycling, for the inorganic or whatever. It's only very, very small parts of the old Rodney. It's not Rodney. And I know that some of the news releases that went out, I had to sort of jump on because it gave the impression it was everywhere. The other issue that we've got, and funnily enough, I'm trying to organise a meeting with some of our ratepayers groups, is that we're coming up for Christmas, and we've always traditionally put on extra runs for those areas that are batches. We've got rental batches. People move in, stay a few nights, move out. We've always had extra runs for those areas, and they've been told they're not going to get any, so they're very, very upset. Recycling that's not picked up, and people say, we'll go back and do the recycling. Well, actually, the owner of the batch has gone back to Australia, the US, wherever. No, Councillor, remember our last discussion? So I'm really, really concerned about it, and I would really like an off-site meeting with you to see how we can get through this, because I've got some very upset people about rubbish collections in particularly the eastern beaches.
Through the chair, just one quick comment, and we're really happy to meet you, Councillor. Rodney will be getting crate, moving from the crate recycling system to the 240 litre. That's going to make a major difference for the recycling issues over peak times of celebration, etc. The rubbish runs, waste to landfill, that's still provided by the private sector until we enter the market, and we have...
But, sorry to jump in, but we used to be able to tell them when they would do it. And I mean, for example, in some of the beach areas, we always did it on a Monday, because on a Monday is when, they come up for the weekend, they leave their rubbish out, and now apparently some of them have been moved to a Wednesday or Thursday, so the seagulls get in and the place is a mess.
Yeah, through the chair, we don't provide any waste to landfill service in most of the Rodney area. That is the contractor. Under our bylaw, there is limited ability for us to direct the contractor to have a rubbish run on a certain day. But when we do enter the market, which will be sooner rather than later, those issues we can actually resolve, because we'll be providing a service. But at the moment, we're not in that market, either in bag or bin. We're only in the market for recycling and the inorganic. So the other context could be rubbish on parks, etc., which I think
I'm not talking about that. So
okay.
you and I need to have a
we'll
chat,
have a
John.
talk.
Oh, no, just to remind councillors that we do have a solid waste working party, and I think that's a an excellent forum for councillors. I don't know which councillors, there's only a limited number that probably attend that, but it's always open to all councillors to come along, and maybe we'll put out that to all councillors at the next date that we have the meeting. Councillor Penrose.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. I'm not on that committee, but I do come along, so I have my 5 cents worth. I just want to acknowledge I just want to talk about Mangere, actually, Robertson Road, and acknowledge the team for the way they've conducted the business on this one. And I'm absolutely grateful that we've got our property maintenance bylaw in place now too. So, you know, that's a step in the right direction. And probably the reason why it has diminished now is because my colleague to the left here has emptied his house out. That aside, it's always going to be an ongoing battle, as we know, and particularly in the south, we've had an ongoing battle. And in regards to communication, and Councillor Wayne's comments, I can tell you that Manukau Courier did a fantastic job over the last 12 months informing the locals and the community of the south what was happening with the Tackle interchange and the widening of the southern motorway. Yet I, like Councillor Cashmore and Sir John, got numerous calls all the time saying, what's happening, what's going on? You know, so no matter how often you tell people, they still don't want to know about it. So my question, Mr. Chair, is surveillance cameras. Are we increasing our surveillance cameras across the south, well, across the region, where we have hotspots for illegal dumping?
Through the chair, yes, we are, and we will be adding more as well. In July, we created an enforcement team with 6 staff who will be focusing on predominantly illegal dumping, and we'll be looking at those hotspots and upping our game really about how we can prevent those continuing, but also how we seek to catch the culprits. And CCTV is one of those tools that we've got.
Thank you. And backing up on that and making sure that when we do catch them, that we do infringe. Cool.
Thank you. Councillor Stewart.
Yes, thank you. Just how long, with the illegal dumping, how long does it take to have it removed once it's been reported?
Through the chair, on our land, we have a target of 24 hours.
What about on residential? Because as you drive around, you see illegal beds and lounge suites and things just being dumped outside private residents' property, and it's obvious that they haven't put it out there. So what happens there? If somebody rings you up and they say, we've had, woken up this morning with there's all this rubbish outside our property and it's not ours and we know nothing about it and our neighbours don't know anything about it, how do we deal with that?
It really depends on, so again we would have the aim to clear it as soon as possible within 24 hours, but it really depends on the type of material and whether there is an opportunity. So we do get those cases where residents do actually put it out on the berm, and we would make contact to the resident to say you've got to take it in, and we give them a period of time. If we don't know who it is and we can't find any evidence, then we would look to clear it ASAP.
Thank you.
So I guess the other thing to add is that sometimes the material may be hazardous, so we would treat that as a priority and get that cleared even sooner.
Thank you.
Yeah, just through the chair, just reference to Councillor Stewart's question. If it's purely on private property, which I think was the genesis of your question, it's not 24 hours because the obligation in the first instance is the household owner. There are occasions that we don't have rigid policies. We have flexibility. We apply common sense, and if a truck's going by and it's going to take a few minutes to throw it on the back, we'll apply common sense. But the starting point is it's the owner of that property's accountability to clear the material off, and it is more prevalent in properties that aren't fenced, where the community can't pick up the subtlety between is it a council issue or is it a private land issue. So there's no formula. It's a gut reaction to decide whether we will do something or whether we'll keep pushing. On the one with the housing, New Zealand, that was pretty clear. We would keep pushing. Government's got deep pockets. there's no requirement for us to come in and do their work for them. But there's no one situation. Each one's looked on at its merits, and we try and look at them pretty quickly.
Thank you. Councillor Halls.
Mr Chair, I think probably most of the issues have been canvassed. I'll save my discussion for our solid waste group.
Thank you.
But can I just say thank you to the team? Awesome work as always.
We've still got 4 questions. Councillor Darby.
I just had a comment once you've moved it, Mr Chair.
Well, no, we're not going to have comments. We're not going to have a debate over the moving of it. So we just want to receive it. Yeah.
Okay, so I will comment now then as others. So, Mr Chair, I've seen the press release, and look, I thank the team for their tremendous work, and there's a lot of community interest, and if you look at the community interest, it's testimony of that inorganics take-up and willingness to get involved in that area. So I want to acknowledge that work, but I do have a concern about the recycling pickups, or the lack of recycling pickups on the North Shore. And I saw the press release this morning. There's a lot of interest and concern in at least the North Shore community. And it's not just in recent weeks. The press release talks about in recent weeks. My first complaint came 4th September, 2nd October, 4th October. So that was Takapuna, Glenfield, Forest Hill, Glenfield, 3rd of November, Castor Bay, yesterday, 5th November, Northcote.
Absolutely.
This is actually not a problem that's been going away very easily. And initially, the first arguments were around about the fatality, and the contractor had some issues leading out of that fatality. I just really want to have some absolute confidence that that particular contractor is going to be properly resourced so that next week we don't all keep fetching these complaints. Now, if I've fetched 5 emails silently out there, there are probably several hundred, if not 1,000, because we all know as elected members the barometer read. I want some confidence that it is really going to be corrected.
Okay, so you've given us that confidence that it won't happen again this coming week.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, that's excellent. Mr. Wilcox.
Yeah. Just one question in regards to state housing. Were they aware of our property maintenance and nuisance bylaw?
Sure. I've lived there since 1998.
Yep. Through the chair, I don't know. I'm not aware of that, so I'll have to check up on that.
Ask the chair.
I'll answer that question. Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Cooper.
Oh, I actually didn't have a question because it's
Okay,
been
okay,
very
fine.
clear. Sorry, Mr Chairman, you say that if we haven't got a question, then but there's no opportunity to say anything, but then other people are doing that. So I just want to add my congratulations. I've already, with that press release, it's already out on the Facebook pages of our local board out west. So it's really very good, and we've had good response so far. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And the last is Councillor Nye.
Thank you, Chair.
Mr Chairman, I had my hand up.
John, that site at Robertson is not the first time, and as you said, it's Housing New Zealand. What are they planning to do to make sure that doesn't happen again? Have they said in Housing New Zealand?
Through the chair, so we're working with them to talk through some of the ideas. So one of them is putting up CCTV cameras. They're also considering fencing off part of the area as well. I think they also recognise that as soon as a small pile appears, they deal with it straight away rather than leaving it for a period of time. So I think there are a few smaller things that they can do. And I think also now that we have clearly the residents recognise obviously how much pride they have in the area, that they're prepared to provide evidence and can see that we're following up as well. I think that probably adds to again another thing that we can help with. But the focus is on Housing New Zealand getting their act together.
Yeah, and that's a concern with that, because of that whole area and the changes that are going place. But the problem is going to perpetuate for them if they don't find a solution.
Thank you. Councillor Quack, do you have a question?
Yeah, look, I'll be very pithy with my questions, Mr Chair. Look, in terms of infringement notices, on this occasion you've put out 15 infringement notices, but I'd be interested to know, in the course of a year, how many infringement notices do you put out, And what do you actually how many people of those who receive infringement notices are actually given the maximum fine of $400 for illegal dumping?
You want to come back to us with that?
Yeah, through the chair, I don't have those numbers at hand.
Okay, one more question, Mr. Chair. Ian, you also talked about a decrease of 58% of illegal dumping in this area. So what was it in raw numbers and what is it now?
So if you exclude, so we used to talk about a lot of illegal dumping being attached as part of the inorganic collection, but if you exclude that and you just look at comparison of number of requests coming in over the first 3 months of this, so July, August, September, first 3 months of this calendar year, in the south, it was 170 tonnes, and it's gone down to 100, I haven't actually got the figure, 107, something like that. So tonnage-wise, it's significant. It's a good 60 tonnes worth of waste.
Yeah, that's still
Thank you. Councillor Penrose, do you have a question?
Yeah, Mr Chair, you cut me short, and I just wanted to finish off because there's a number of concerns around
we're running out of time. That's the problem.
I'm sure. We spent 2 hours on the TPPA, Mr Chair. Look, I just want to compliment this team on this. I just want to compliment this team on this, Mr Chair. For the fact being is that we have 12,500 HNZ houses across the counties Manukau South. 12,500 houses. And it's been a bugbear of mine for 10 years. The issue is here is that for years, HNZ leaves little pockets of rubbish and it accumulates. And no matter what happens, the responsibility is going to come back to HNZ. And it's not council, Mr Chair. So, you know, we've got to get this picture here. So, again, it's about accountability with HNZ. They have to move faster and swifter, not council.
Thank you. Right, I'm going to move the motion that we received the presentation.
I'm happy to
Seconded
second.
by Councillor Penrose. I'll put that motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declare that carried. And we'll just do one item and then we'll take a short break so they can look at the electronics. Thank you, officers. And it's in relation to item 9, extension of regional pest management plan to December 2016. This is really just a rollover item. So if there's no questions, the officers are here, but I'll I'll move the motion and Councillor Cashmore will second it. Oh, click, it's like a horse. Question from Mr. Wilcox.
Yes, good morning. My question relates to the tangata whenua kōrero. You say you're going to have further engagement. I'm just trying to work out do you have a plan for this further engagement? Because I noticed 73.3 says tangata whenua through Runanga and Iwi. So it was definitely not built for Auckland because we have a large Mātāwaka population. So I'm just trying to work out how we're going to consult with the majority of Māori that live in Auckland.
You're referring to consultation on the new plan rather than this extension of the existing plan? There is currently consultation occurring public-wide and on the discussion document which was approved last month. There will be opportunity for hui, and then when the proposed plan is being drafted there will also be targeted consultation at that time.
Do we have a plan yet, or we're just going to go for the extension now? I mean, it just seems to be we're
It's only
extending
for 1 year.
But this is the second time we've extended, isn't it?
No, actually it's the fourth time we've extended.
Oh my God, even worse, I didn't read it properly.
Okay. Okay, I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Declare that carried. Now I'll take a 5-minute break while they look at the electronics before we go into the pool. And we have the chair of the... We have Mr Peter Haynes, the chair of the Albert Eden Board here. You want to talk to this item, Peter?
We're going to have the Air Force talk about renewable infrastructure, military infrastructure.
Hey, Mr. Are you right?
You're on, mate.
Sorry, Peter, we're just kind of like, trying to round them all up, but seeing you're there, we'll get you in position and
thank you. I
ready
understand
to
as a
go.
board chair, I sometimes have the same problem.
Good to have you along. Thank you very much.
I'll send you what we agreed to remind you.
Right, we're in your hands, Peter. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to just make a few brief points about our submission. So you'll see we've provided some quite detailed points of feedback. Overall, we are simply seeking, I think, to tweak the council's submission at a few points where we think that it might be enhanced by doing so. I'd just say also in a general sense, our approach in providing the feedback is very consistent with the approach taken with the council's draft submission as a whole. It's based on our experience. And I'd also note and commend the Hibiscus Coast and Bays feedback as well, because they've taken the same approach. We believe that when making bylaws and regulations, that it's essential to make them with regard to the real world context. And in this case, the real world context is that there are very high levels of non-compliance. And if I could just go one step further back and look at the underlying attitudes that result in that non-compliance, because I think that's essential to understanding what we're doing here. I've been on a number of site inspections and looked at non-compliant pools and spa pools and so on, and on quite a number of occasions been confronted by highly indignant owners who can't see why they should be prevailed upon to properly fence or cover their pools and spa pools and so on. They can only see it as an imposition, as a compliance cost, and don't give any real consideration to the purpose of these protections. And if one understands that there is this attitude and very high levels of non-compliance that result from that, then one can only question the idea that we need fewer inspections and that we should rely on voluntary compliance and so on. So, that's where we're coming from essentially, and we commend the council's draft submission because that's also shaped by reality, the reality of these high levels of non-compliance. I'd just add in that respect, or I just add to our feedback by commending on point 374 which reads, because of the high levels of non-compliance, I don't know, which is good, discovered by the council across the past 5 years, the council believes that the proposed 5-yearly inspection timeframe should be replaced with a shorter timeframe. And on that, I'd recommend that you be more specific, because it's always useful to be more specific if you want to influence, and that you take the Hibiscus Coast and Bay's local board's suggestion of 3 years. And also I'd explain what is, finally, I'd explain what is described as the minority view within the board, which actually might have been the majority view, but this was put together in great haste. We would phrase the wording something like, the yard containing the pool must have a continuous barrier to prevent entry by unsupervised children from neighbouring properties or the street. This barrier could consist of a mix of fences, walls or hedges, but must have secure gates at points of entry. Actually, finally, I'd just like to note that note the work that my board members Rachel Langton and Margie Watson did in preparing the board's submission. And if you know the complexion of our board, you'll note that that's a non-partisan effort. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any questions of Peter? Thank you. Kathy?
Just to signal that I will be moving an amendment in support of 7 small amendments that Albert Eden Board suggest on page 43, which are all eminently sensible. But Peter, I'd quite like to hear more about your process as a board when you find a property is non-compliant. You mentioned that there was some irate householders. Can you just tell me what you do, when you find out about it, what happens next?
Well, we don't find out about the non-compliance, of course, the officers do in the first place. Yeah. When we inspect and find that they're non-compliant, our committee meets, and I should just note that every member of our board is either a member or an alternate on that committee. So I'm an alternate member, you know, we don't have any qualms about exposing ourselves to liabilities or anything like that on my board. And we meet and consider whether or not they're non-compliant. If they're non-compliant, then we determine that they can't use the pool or whatever until it's compliant. It's a normal thing, and that's all handled by the officers. So I would imagine that there are a number of members of the governing body who have actually some experience of this too.
Well, it seems that the Hibiscus Bays Board is saying that they have concerns about elected members being requested to make these decisions because they have, well, some of them are refusing to do it. So your board has got a contrary view to that, have they?
Well, no, we don't have a view, but that's why I was making the point. We're not exercised by the possible liabilities or anything, and everybody has quite happily participated, but we don't have a view, so probably if truth be known, it would be less work for us.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I've always been surprised at the amount of time swimming pool issues do take up, but...
yeah, it is quite considerable.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions of Peter? Well, thank you very much, Peter.
Thank you.
We'll now ask the officers to come up to the table and see what their views are on the Eden, Albert Eden local board's views and the other views that have been presented as well. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, councillors and members. My name is Mike Wakefield. I'm the solicitor with Council's Legal Services team. And on my left today, I have Wolfgang Nether, who is the Manager of Compliance, and Nicholas Powell, who is part of the Building Control Compliance team as well.
Excuse me, can you just bring the mic closer to you, because there's difficulty hearing in the back otherwise? Thank you very much.
Certainly. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to this matter today. we're here today to introduce the amendment, which Mr Haynes has just spoken to, and answer any questions that the committee may have.
So have you been able to consider these local board submissions?
Yes, we have, and if it's in apt time, we can talk to those briefly now, if that suits the committee. So in relation to, if we just look at page 43, if we run through those 7 points raised by the Albert Eden Local Board, the first is in relation to section 162C1, where the age is talked about as being children under 5 as opposed to under 6. And Wolfgang, you may be best to speak to this, but the way in which the bill has been drafted is it refers to a standard in relation to fencing and barriers of pools, and that standard relies on children under 5 as opposed to 6, which is a change from the Fencing of Swimming Pools Act.
I think the age of 6 was introduced in the Fencing of Swimming Pool Act, considering that kids would get to school in New Zealand the age of 5. They would get lessons at school for 1 year, and therefore the safety from drowning would be raised. That was in 1987. All the standards around child safety and statistics, however, show that most of the drownings are actually happening at the age of under 4. So the international standards, it's Australian standards, American standards, and the New Zealand standards, which are based on those, are all recommending to aim any barriers to make them non-climbable for children under 5. So we've just aligned this with international standards.
Okay, thank you. I'm still not. Is the new bill saying under the age of 6?
Under the age of 5.
Under the age of 5.
Yes.
So we're back to under. Or that's what it is.
And actually, FOSPA never says under the age of 6. It was just an assumption that we always took, that we'll treat it under the age of 6. So the bill now is introduced.
So the board's saying it under the age of 6, but the bill's saying 5.
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
None of the other boards.
In relation to the second point, the words "at all times," I don't think we have an issue with that particular suggestion, and that can be incorporated as see fit.
Yep.
The third point under 162C1, where there is a need to specify what is meant when a pool is in use or not in use. When looked at in terms of what section 162C1 suggests, I don't feel that there's any real need to incorporate that particular change. That particular provision, which is on page 22 of the agenda, talks about every residential pool that is filled or partly filled with water, and it just adds an extra layer of interpretation if you start to talk about whether or not that pool is in use or not in use. We're looking at it from a protection perspective, which involves pools having barriers as opposed to whether or not they are in use at any one time.
Through the chair, as a matter of fact, a pool that is not in use is probably more dangerous because it's not supervised.
Yes.
So the determining factor is it is filled with water to a height that it creates a danger to children under 5.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Turning over the page, I think we'll find that these 2 points are largely addressed through the bill in any event. The board's simply suggesting at 1 that they support the making of an offence, and in relation to 4, there are infringement regulations which specify that the infringement notice is for a fine of up to $500. No, sorry, a infringement fee of $500, which I think will largely address that issue.
Okay, so we go to the next points then.
So the next ones relate to 450B, and the council case seems happy to support those 2 amendments.
Yes, we are.
So you'll incorporate those in?
Yes, we can incorporate those.
That's 3C1, 3C2.
That's correct.
Yes. Okay.
And clause F9
Yeah,
I'm not entirely sure that whether this is required. It seems to be an issue of semantics. Whether or not something's able to restrict or does restrict is not. I'm not entirely clear why that amendment is required. What's your take on that?
I think that restricts is more defining, and I've got no trouble supporting that.
Okay. Yeah, no trouble supporting.
Okay, so Mr. Chair, we will support that.
You'll put that one, okay. So that's the end of their.
That's correct.
Yeah. So what about the other ones in relation to the other boards?
Well, the local board feedback from Hibiscus and Bays largely provides feedback and no specific amendments in the same way that the Albert Eden feedback has. And similar with the Rodney local board, they've provided general support, but they haven't provided any specific amendments that they think would better serve the purpose of the legislation.
So just on that point of officers as opposed to elected members making the decisions on appeals or challenges, what's your view on that?
The bill doesn't actually have any provisions for special exemptions. So the function of the local board under FOSPA came in for special exemptions. So anyone who had any reason not to comply with the Fencing and Swimming Pool Act could apply for a special exemption.
Oh,
and
okay,
and only those special exemptions would be dealt with by elected members. So we believe that the bill is flexible enough to make special exemptions obsolete, and there is no provisions in the bill for special exemptions anymore.
Okay, thank you.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, there's been other feedback which has been incorporated into the Local Government New Zealand draft submission, where other councils have supported the removal of exemptions, supporting the fact that this will save the council an elected member and council time.
Thank you. So, Councillor Casey, do you have any other matters you wish to
Yeah,
raise?
there's just one then that is still there on the table, and that's the age restriction. And the Albert Eden Board suggests 6 years, and you're saying 5 years is international standard. But there's no reason why we can't opt for 6.
No, there is no specific reason. It's just if all international data and research in researching barriers, effective barriers, and I mean, there's technology provides new solutions all the time, are measured internationally for children under 5. It's pretty hard to argue why we should then set our age under 6.
Let's get a bit
Okay.
Just because we have concerns.
Yes,
But statistics show that actually 99% of the drowning in domestic pools are children under 4.
Under 4.
Under 4.
Okay, I'm happy with that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lee?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, gentlemen. In the opinion of our legal advisors here today, will this bill achieve what it sets out to do, that is, reduce the compliance burden currently imposed on pool owners? Do you think it will?
Yes, it will. Through the chair, what I mentioned before, the cost of exemptions, and I think we've got, Nick, correct me, 400 per year?
Yeah, roughly 400 a year, and about 95% of those applications are spa pool.
In relation to spa pool that have a lockable leg, that are regarded by international standards and the New Zealand standard as being safe, but just because of the fact that they're not fenced, we have to put them through a special exemption process. There is an immense cost to council. There are meetings of local boards, there are reports to be prepared, so that is taken away. That in itself is an immense saving. We've got currently 33,000 spa pools on our register, About 9,500 of those pools are spa pools. If the majority of those spa pools are spa pools with lockable lift, it is proposed that they will have a different compliance and auditing regime to a swimming pool. So that also would be a saving.
So a lesser burden. And in terms of the council's amendments, which are obviously concerned also with the critical matter of life and death, will our amendments assist the aims of the bill to reduce the compliance burden, or are we really just changing stuff around?
In terms of the issue of spa pools and hot tubs and the matter of exemptions and the need for pool owners to obtain exemption from the council, absolutely this is decreasing the regulatory burden on pool owners. And in terms of the council's own obligations, under Fencing of Swimming Pools Act, we were under an obligation to ensure that swimming pools within our region are fenced in accordance with the Act. That has now been supported by the fact that the council must undertake periodic inspections of all residential pools. Yeah. So it's a specific recognition of the fact that the council is seen as the best authority to complete those inspections and ensure compliance with what are now building code requirements for fencing.
So will that reduce the compliance burden on pool owners and territorial authorities, that rearrangement?
So the other thing is obviously with having a notice to fix a regime is obviously there going to be instead of right now you can only do a prosecution, and that costs obviously money to everybody to run through the whole prosecutions. Going to have an infringement process will obviously take that whole burden away for cost too, and which will probably increase the compliance.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Penrose.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. My question is I've always been curious as to why we've got elected members doing these inspections in regards to spa pools, pools in general.
Under the new bill, that would go out the door, wouldn't it?
Yes.
I think that's just for that.
That's fine, that's cool.
Okay, Mr. Wilcox?
Yeah, I suppose my question relates to if 65% of all pools do not comply, that's quite horrific, or is it? What's being done about that?
Through the chair, we are therefore suggesting that that we are remaining at a frequency of inspections of every 3 years rather than the suggested 5 years of the bill. The non-compliance issues sometimes are of a minor nature, even though they are quite important. It is important to realize that if somebody moves his barbecue against the swimming pool fence, that barbecue is a climbable object and therefore makes the swimming pool fence non-compliance. It is issues like that that we are addressing. It is gates, that are not closing once they're opened 150 millimeters, because that is what the law really requests, that those gates are self-closing from their distance, so that springs have to be renewed or a little bit of grease has to be put on the hinges. It is small issues like that, but they're important. They're extremely important for the safety and functioning of those fences, and we feel it is vital that Council has a regular look at that, and we feel that the 3-yearly inspection regime, or at least an inspection regime below 5 years, is adequate, and we have put that therefore in our submission.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Casey again.
Yeah, it's the same issue. 3.74, you're asking for a shorter time frame, but both Albert Eden and Hibiscus Bays suggested 3 years. Why don't we just put 3 years in?
Well, we have discussed the fact that the council operates a 3-year inspection regime in the earlier paragraphs, and I guess that comes back to the intention, or the intentions for the bill. It's to encourage voluntary compliance by pool owners, and imposing a formal inspection regime that must be mandatory across the country is a good step forward, because the council and several other territorial authorities at the moment are the only ones that do operate an inspection regime at all. So 5 years is a positive step. We can absolutely request with more authority that the 3-year inspection regime be rolled out.
Is that the wish, what's the meeting?
Well, if I can
Repeat
just
that, Mr. Chair.
talk to
What?
Mr. Chairman, the 65% non-compliance is a shocker.
Yeah.
I mean, it is. And this is one way of trying to deal to that.
I think that may be the view. It seems to be the sentiment of what I can hear around the meeting, so
You want to see houses?
Sorry, what are you hearing
I-
as the sentiment? 3 year?
3 years.
No. No.
Oh, well, okay, we'll put up that as a motion, as an
I'll
amendment,
amend
and
it.
we'll see what we get. Councillor Holmes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just trying to get really clear in my mind. So we're lessening the burden, and Councillor Lee's questions were really useful because of the far greater clarity and common sense that will be applied to this. But we then have the ability to, having made it much easier for our pool owners, to just garner back a little bit of control with the 3 yearly check. And having spent a lot of time out on pool inspections with Wolfgang, we do know that things change rapidly after 3 years. So I'm very happy to support the 3-year thing. So I'm just trying to make sure that we're really clear about that balance. But I have a question. So can I just ask our staff, the Judge Randerson decision, the declaratory decision that Waitakere went for around the immediate pool area, does the changed wording suggested in here take us closer to that immediate pool area definition or not?
Thank you for the question, Deputy Mayor. The definition of immediate pool area has been something that did trouble authorities for quite some time, which is why Waitakere went to the High Court. It was concerning to us that the bill proposed to simply roll over the same definition that was used in the Fencing and Swimming Pools Act. We thought that that definition, although there's still going to be grey area, could be tightened by rolling over what Judge Randerson determined in the High Court declaration proceedings, which is why we've proposed the definition that we have. There is obviously still a degree of interpretation there, but that brings us closer to something that's the council was more comfortable with.
Great, good work, thank you.
Councillor Cooper.
So we're sorry, still on questions? Are we still on questions?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just clarifying because I wasn't sure what you said before. So
What I said was, I thought there may have been a view of the meeting that it go to 3, obviously not. So I've said to Councillor Casey, put up
sorry, I didn't think it was obvious, Mr. Chairman, because we had. Yeah.
No. I think when you said no, well, it was obviously no.
No, I didn't. No, I didn't get to say anything. I was sorry. I agree with 3. I just because
you agree with 3.
Yes.
Okay. Well, we have a.
When we're only asking questions, you can't. It's hard to get a view of everybody. They're just asking questions.
Okay. So you got another question though.
No, that was what I was going to ask the staff. Are they clearly off saying that we should go for 3? That was what I was clear. Thank you.
Councillor Penrose.
Thanks.
Well, what we'll do is we'll put a D in the list of amendment of stems of the motion, and we'll vote on that as to whether the shorter time frame of 3 years, and if it's successful, but that's what will go in the submission. If it's not, it won't. So
Question.
You got a question?
A question about that, in regard to that, and so the problem with that is if the owner of a pool makes an alteration to the area that's fenced off, and who does the responsibility fall on, the council or the owner? If they've made an unauthorised alteration to any after inspections, who does the responsibility if somebody has an accident? Who does that fall on?
If you actually move the pool fencing or anything, under the Building Act, pool fencing is classed as a structure. So if you actually move or expand or make this pool area smaller, you actually need a building consent, and then that will go through a building consent process to go through it.
If the work is unauthorised,
responsibility would lie with the property owner. Clearly.
Yeah, with the property owner.
Okay, Councillor Penrose and Councillor Cooper.
Yeah, so in light of that, Mr Chair, I mean to say, I wouldn't be supporting 3 years. I'd be looking at 5 years because we continue to get told all the time that, the cost and the burden on the pool owners and that the council continues to put these costs onto us. And in light of the fact is that, I continue to hear daily of some of our issues around I'm more concerned around our building enforcement area where we need additional support because of what's actually going on in the marketplace, so I won't be supporting this.
Okay, so Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. In terms, for me, this is about balancing cost with safety, and we've just had a conversation and a briefing around health and safety, and I know that the fault or burden lies with the homeowner. However, we had a death in Ranui, and council were pulled up really sharply. The homeowner had buggerised around with the gate, hadn't sorted it out, a little neighbour's kid got in and died, and council were pulled up sharply, and probably Wolfgang remembers, because we were a couple of months behind on the inspection or something. We didn't, for some reason, we couldn't get hold of the owners, whatever it was, but we know that council is always last man standing, because we're always going to be there and we always get it. And that's my concern, is that it's been annual inspections, but 3 years is a good break. You'll often have, and we have a very high turnover in homes or selling houses in Auckland. We've got one of the highest in the world, actually. We sell our houses really frequently. New owners who don't understand their obligations, a whole lot of stuff like that. It's an opportunity to get to a new owner. Excuse me, can I please speak? And that means that I know, but it's really hard. If we can actually do that, get to people every 3 years, it's quite often to be new owners, and then you can actually have that, a staff member can have that conversation with them, and everybody's got a different interpretation. I want to make sure we've tied this down, not only in the inspection regime, but the interpretation is narrow, because like Councillor Cooper and other Councillor Closer, swimming pool inspection committees, we actually designed those because the interpretation was so wide open that we spent huge amounts of money on defending challenges to it, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and never got court costs back and all sorts of stuff like that. I just want this really tight, so we really know what we're doing. Our staff have got the tools to deal with it. We don't get challenged in court over and over, and we don't have any deaths. And so for me, this is a balance, and so that's why I want to support 3, because you don't get people staying in their houses very long in Auckland.
Mr Chair, point of clarification, Mr Chair, and the council has a lot of ponds around Auckland too, but Councillor Philippinus, he's, if you can just move that for a second, he's declared a conflict of interest on this item.
Well,
because he's got a swimming pool. I've got a swimming pool.
I've got a swimming pool. I'm not going to declare. I'm not going to declare. Order. Councillor Philippinus decided to do that. I've got a swimming pool. I'm not going to declare an interest because there's so many of people. I think they're so widespread in the community.
Exactly.
So anyway, Councillor Cashmore, did you wish?
Thanks, Mr Chair. Last term when I was on the local board, I was on the inspection committee, and it was not a lot of fun, I must admit, so I'm glad to see you finding a smarter way through with a bit more common sense to be applied, which is welcomed and great. One of the issues that we ran into a lot of headaches was, apart from spa pools, which now we're seeing that covers be mandatory.
Don't have a bloody VA.
The Papakura boys have arrived in town. Is the actual structures of the houses with the actual inbuilt pools around them, so you look at F9, 3.3, 3.4 and 3.5, particularly 3.3 and 3.4 with automatic doors opening in, beepers. What degree of flexibility does the new Act provide for that? Because I'm not reading any at all.
Through the Chair, it is important to understand in comparison to the Fencing of Swimming Pool Act, which was a single-purpose act which was created before the Building Act came into place. The alignment with the Building Act drags the regulation for swimming pools into the Building Act, and how it works is you've got the actual legislation setting out that pools have to be fenced. You've got the regulation, which is the building code, which sets the performance standard. And this is the performance standard you were just referring to. Below that will be sitting a standard that is accepted under the regulation as a acceptable solution. And that it is here.
It's more practical.
That will be, most likely will be the standard. It's a bit unfortunate that Parliament hasn't actually announced the standard at the same time, but that will be going down to the nitty-gritty and saying the fence has to be 1.2 metres high, the gaps in the fence have to be 100 millimetres and all that. And I can assure you that this is much more flexible than the schedule of the Fencing of Swimming Pools Act.
But would still ensure that the kiddies are safe, basically.
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, Councillor Lee, you got a question?
Just one quick question.
Yeah.
In terms of the reducing the compliance burden, did that also suppose reducing the cost to pool owners or householders or ratepayers or whatever? Is that considered part of the burden to be decreased?
Through the chair, yes. In clarifying and providing a flexible approach, so under the Fencing of Swimming Pools Act, the acceptable solution was very narrow. Now, introducing a much more flexible regime under the standard reduces cost.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Councillor General.
Yeah, point of clarification again, Mr Chair, and I'm trying to be nice to you today. That is that recently we passed a navigation and safety bylaw where we put the onus back on the skipper or the driver of the boat. So going from 5 years to 3 years, we're only going to inflict more cost on the pool owner, but you made it very clear that the owner, the responsibility and liability falls back on the property owner, not council.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to move it. Councillor Casey, you going to second it?
Yep.
Second it.
Can we have it?
Well, what we'll do is we'll move A to C as in one, and we'll do D separately. How's that?
Thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to move A to C. Put A to C. Those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declare that carried. Now D, we'll
By
do
division.
that by division. Okay.
Councillor Anai.
Aye.
Only a submission.
Councillor Brewer.
No.
Councillor Casey.
Yes.
Councillor Cashmore.
No.
Councillor Cooper.
Yes.
Councillor Darby.
Or.
Councillor Filipino.
He's got a pull.
Not Deputy Mayor Pulse.
Aye.
Compliant.
Councillor Crum.
Against.
Councillor Lee.
Aye.
Member McDonald.
Aye.
Councillor Penrose.
No.
Councillor Quacks.
No.
Councillor Stewart.
No.
Councillor Sir John Walker.
No.
Councillor Walker.
Yes.
Councillor Watson.
No.
Councillor Webster.
No.
Member Wilcox.
Yes.
Chair.
Yes. It's carried 10-9, is that correct? Okay, declare that carried, and that's the end of that
It's only a
item.
submission. The government will do what they want to do.
We now go to item 11. The Manukau Harbour, and thank you, officers. Thanks very much. You'll
Yeah, it's cold in here. Should have brought the coat.
Time for men in woolen suits, isn't it? It's only, it's quite 20 degrees, isn't it?
Thank you.
Right, so Mara, you're going to introduce everybody here?
Yes, thank you, George. I wondered if before we introduce ourselves, if I might just acknowledge our local board members that are here that sit on the Manukau Harbour Forum. So I've got the chair of the forum, Jill Naismith, Bridget Graham from Mangakiki Tamaki, and David Home from Hoki Tāpapa.
welcome to you, and thanks for coming up and coming in here today. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Kia ora tātou. I'm really pleased to present this Manukau Harbour update report with our team. I've got a small presentation to guide your consideration of this item, and I'll just give you a quick reminder while we're here. Under the LTP, you passed some resolutions relating to the Manukau Harbour, and those are referenced for you on page 52 of your report. Those resolutions were your response to community advocacy under the LTP for the Manukau Harbour, and feedback received from Mana Whenua and the Manukau Harbour Forum specifically. The Manukau Harbour Forum specific advocacy points related to hydrodynamic modelling. So since the adoption of those resolutions, we've had a cross-council team of staff, and we've been looking at giving effect to them and issues and opportunities for the Manukau. Some of the team is present here today, and they'll be supporting us in this presentation, and I'll get them to introduce themselves.
I'm Jenny Fuller. I'm team leader of the Biodiversity and Coastal Strategy team in the Auckland Plan Strategy and Research Department.
Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jared Walker. I'm a marine scientist in the Research, Investigations and Monitoring Unit.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Emma, a relationship advisor in Infrastructure and Environmental Services.
Welcome.
As you'll see in the report, we've got 3 recommendations for your consideration. And the first one is around endorsing the Manukau Harbour Work Programme, which Emma will take us through. The second one is around noting the regional funding we've allocated to properly look at and scope the feasibility of hydrodynamic modelling. And the third is around that the options, including any funding for that modelling, would be brought back to both the Manukau Harbour Forum and this committee. Just to give a bit of context on the Manukau, as you'll be well aware, the Manukau Harbour is a really significant cultural value to a number of hapu and iwi within Tamakina-Kaurau. It's also quite highly valued by the communities which make up the 9 local boards which border the Manukau, and those boards are represented in pink on that map there. That map also gives you a good indication of the scale of the harbour and some of the issues that we might need to consider around water quality within it. This report you've got here has specifically been discussed and developed with input from the Manukau Harbour Forum, and who have a main objective to raise the profile of Manukau Harbour as a significant cultural, ecological and economic asset. Those boards have also committed OPEX funding to support delivery of that objective over the last couple of years. I'd also like to draw your attention to Jill Naismith's letter, which is an attachment to this report, and those local board members here today. And I'll just pass over to Emma to take us through the work programme.
So good morning again. This is just in reference to the attachment beginning on page 59, which is a spreadsheet showing all the activity relevant to the Manukau Harbour. So the point of putting together this work programme was really just to show the Manukau Harbour Forum and this committee the breadth of activity that supports the Manukau Harbour, and in particular the forum's, what's encapsulated in the forum's vision around the social, economic, cultural well-being of the harbour. So this is how we've put together the work programme. The key thing to note is that it's not an integrated work programme. The reason being is that the projects included in the work programme were developed as part of other council work programmes. An integrated programme for the harbour would have been developed as part of a strategic plan for the harbour, which we don't have. So this, just to take note, this is a really comprehensive list of activity relevant to the harbour. There are some gaps, things around historic heritage that is not included, but we intend this to be a working document that will be updated over time when new projects happen and other projects are completed.
Apologies for the incompetence with the stick. I'm just going to talk briefly to the part of the report that talks about the future work programme. Basically, the items that are set out in the current work programme, many of those will continue, so they will be part of the future work programme. And we do hope and intend that there is greater integration around these sort of programs, both from officers talking to each other and working more closely with the Manukau Harbour Forum as a cross-council integrated team. And it's also worth noting that many of these programs are quite long-term, and there's significant local board support for these projects. Many of them are in fact funded by the local boards or who put significant money into them. What we're doing at the moment is, as outlined in the report, we are looking at an action plan that was developed in 1990 and doing an analysis of what's been done and what hasn't been done in relation to that. And that will give us some clues about what are some of the gaps in the current understanding of the Manukau. And of course, Waiora Waimari is going to be quite an important interface with the whole of the Manukau. That program will be looking at different catchments around the region in relation to the requirements of the NPS freshwater, and the Manukau, of course, is going to feature in that as well. And will likely, although it's not fully determined, be one of the areas that is looked at in the first instance, one of the earlier areas. And of course, the treaty settlement is going to be extremely relevant. That's coming along in the Manukau, and there's going to be lots of things happening with mana whenua and governance and co-management and all those sort of issues, so they clearly need to be taken into account with the future work as well. And I guess the final point is probably the one that maybe gives a clue as to why we don't have a strategic plan. We really don't have any funding for this at the moment, so what we're doing is looking at using existing budgets. So the work that's been done in relation to, for example, the review of the 1990 action plan, that's been done by staff. There's no specific budget in relation to that, so any desire to develop a more strategic approach from the governing body, from staff at the governing body level, will require some funding or reprioritisation of existing funding. But I think the first point is very, very, very real. We are looking at being a much more integrated cross-council working party on this now, and we feel that we've already made some quite good progress on that in terms of how we've pulled the program together and how we're working with the forum.
Hello.
Thank you.
So in terms of the resolution in regards to hydrodynamic modelling, the impetus behind the modelling is to essentially identify where sediment accumulates in the harbour. This is quite important as we undertake modelling in other areas, we're learning that all the sediment doesn't end up in one area. There is interactions, connectivity in the marine environment, so the model can really help us understand how that connectivity and those processes work in the harbour. Currently there's a suite of models that are quite old now. Watercare has undertaken modelling associated with their activities. There's been modelling undertaken by NIWA and other research institutes, but some of these models are quite old now, so we need to look at how relevant those models are in today's environment. Also, those models were designed to look at various inputs, so different types of contaminants, sediments, heavy metals, etc., and they were designed for specific issues associated with activities in the harbour. So we need to look at the purpose of this model and also look at the scope of the entire exercise. We also want to take a data review of looking at what models are available and whether they're applicable today, and if not, how can we redesign or develop those models to deliver the aspirations that everyone has for the Manukau Harbour. Currently we've sourced funding to undertake stage one, which is a data review and also scoping of that model. So as I mentioned, there's quite a bit of information out there, but we need to determine its applicability today and whether the quality of the data is relevant to describe today's issues, but also the spatial extent across the harbour. There may be some areas that may be well described, some areas not so well described. So it's determining how much data, the quality of that data is to inform the further development of the whole of harbour hydrodynamic model. And then in subsequent years, that's where we'll be looking at undertaking field sampling or further data collection where we need to, but also in the final stages we'll be actually developing the model itself, but also there's a section of a model that needs to be developed, and that's in regards to sediment transport, and that model will tell us where sediment's coming from, where it deposited, but also not only sediment can be described, but also contaminants such as heavy metals, which are another issue for the harbour.
Thanks, Jared. Just in terms of next steps, as Jared was describing, we're committed to that scoping and feasibility study, and we're hopeful to get a progress report on that to both the forum and yourselves in March next year. And in parallel, as Jenny described, we're reviewing the 1990 action plan and looking at a deadline of the end of this calendar year, and to provide a summary report of those review outcomes. As I think three of us have said, based on the findings of the hydrodynamic scoping study, we'll then have to look to identify future funding sources for the model's delivery, and that will require reprioritisation of budgets. I guess in conclusion, the progress to date is quite reflective of the collaborative cross-council team we've been working together on, and I'd really like to acknowledge the effort of those people. And that's the end of our presentation, Mr Chairman, and we're happy to take questions.
Thank you. Got questions from Councillor Crum.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Are you taking some comments as well as questions, or just purely questions?
No, we'll have some questions first, okay. And then, because we...
In that case,
and then we'll go... Yeah, you can move the motion once...
Yep, we'll do. My question, which I was going to insert into comments, but let's have a question. How did you come about the funding to scope the possibility of hydrodynamic modelling?
Really good question through the Chair. We put a proposal to some of the 4 units which are in the cross-council team, and we've got $5,000 contribution each from stormwater, environmental services, natural strategy and policy, and research and evaluations.
So very much a demonstration of that collaborative reference. Thank you.
Right, Councillor Casey.
Yeah, it's a budget line question. The line reads, Waikofi Remedial Works. There's a question mark under budget. I wondered why.
I'll pass you over to Emma to answer that one.
Through the Chair, that's that work around the Waikofi remediation, and I hadn't had a budget figure by the time the report was put together, but I can certainly find out what the new budget figure is for that work and let you know.
Thank you. That's great.
Thank you. Councillor Lee, do you have a question?
No, just a statement rather than a question.
I'll wait till we put the motion in. Councillor Wayne Walker.
Sure.
Question?
Yeah, got a few questions. Sounds like you're really looking at this hydrodynamic modelling.
Can you ask the question, please, Councillor Walker? You get into preamble when you're asking a question.
Sometimes it's nice to give a compliment, Mr Chair. Well, anyway, can I just continue?
No, ask the question, please.
Well, why don't I just give it a miss, Mr Chair?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, if you don't want to ask the question, but I just saying, ask a question. You make a statement, and that kind of rankles with other people, because if everybody does that, it just puts the meeting into disarray, I think. So if you ask the question, and then I've said to Councillor Crum, we'll then move a motion, and then we can make comments, okay? So
you finished, Mr Chair.
You asked your question.
Around the hydrodynamic modelling, will the modelling that you're doing be applicable to other areas? So are you generating templates and the like that might apply to Waitemata and other locations around Auckland?
Good question, Wayne.
So, through the Chair, to answer your question, Councillor Walker, there is currently a hydrodynamic model for the Central Waitemata Harbour. I've just finished doing a hydrodynamic model exercise for the Upper Waitemata as well. Also, we have undertaken hydrodynamic modelling for the Kaipara Harbour, and I understand there is a hydrodynamic model for the Hauraki Gulf, which has been contributed to by Waikato Regional Council and Niua, and I think it was the Auckland Regional Council. So the Manukau Harbour is really probably the last area to have a whole of harbour approach in terms of hydrodynamic modelling. So specifically to answer your question, the template we don't need, but there will be synergies amongst the different harbours because we have the information and the modelling at hand.
Okay. The other question I've got, just around your modelling, is the work that you're doing ongoing in the sense that you can have data collection points for picking up sedimentation on an ongoing basis, so it's not just a study at one point in time, but it's dynamic?
So the value that a hydrodynamic model brings is being able to keep it alive over time. So it won't, not only will it let us assess where sediment is coming from and other contaminants are washing off the land and ending up in the harbour, you can start scenario testing, looking at if you start changing from one land use to another, you can then start making predictions on what those load or changes in loads of sediments and contaminants may be. So, as you all know, Auckland is facing development in certain areas. We can start testing the development scenarios around changes in land use. Also, your comment around monitoring in the harbour and water quality testing, etc. The Manukau Harbour has been sampled in terms of its environment, water quality, marine ecology, etc. for the last 30 years. The plan is to keep that monitoring alive, so the model can link with all the other state of the environment monitoring that we do undertake.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you very much. I'll ask my other questions offline to save time.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor Halls.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mine follows on neatly from those questions. So the hydrodynamic modelling and the information that comes with that, will that be useful for us to prioritise work? And I'm thinking particularly, say, some of the issues that we've got on the west Auckland side of the Manukau. We're looking at the sediment load from Little Muddy and places like that. We're looking at the bad swimming figures around the Titirangi area. Will we be able to use this as a way of prioritising our spend on replanting streams, mangrove management, and where we should put our best energy forward into managing water quality?
Through the Chair, that's a brilliant question. The short answer to that is yes. So the part of the impetus of coming up with a model a hydrodynamic model is to exactly that, is to direct where we can get best bang for buck when we try to manage our activities on land. Currently, the Manukau Harbour is a large catchment. We're unsure as to where the best place to invest our money. Budgets are an issue, so if we can have a tool that provides us with the best information to direct our spend to get the best bang for buck in terms of land management to reduce sediments and contaminants to the harbour, this is probably one of the best tools we can be investing in.
Thank you. Councillor Casey?
Well, it was just a suggestion. In the latter half of this is great work. I think it's really great to see so much work laid out. In the last three parts, renewals, ecological work and amenity, it's board money that's really funding most of it. And I wondered if you could just, in a future revise of this, just isolate out which boards are funding which, because I know there's 3 boards involved. Nine boards involved. I'm thinking about 9.
Mr. McDonald?
Just to show the breadth, I think, because it just says local, and that means.
Mr. McDonald?
Just a few questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering, we've got a report there from the Waitangi Tribunal that mana whenua need to be involved. Their rights have been deteriorated, particularly around access to seafood and other things. I'm wondering why mana whenua aren't on the forum, and what we're doing to engage mana whenua in the process. Also, whether you've consulted with mana whenua around the work program. I know that treaty settlements in terms of co-management are years away, but meantime we're developing, the vision for Manukau Harbour. We're developing work programs and so forth, and I think Māori are just being invited to be consulted with.
And so, if I just correct me if I'm wrong, there's 3 questions within that. So, in regards to mana whenua on the Manukau Harbour Forum, that has been a discussion which has been ongoing, and the Manukau Harbour Forum have agreed with mana whenua to meet with them 3 times a year. And the first hui for this financial year will be held at the end of this month, and we expect to cover some of the issues within this report with mana whenua there. But that's really the beginning of a much larger discussion around representation at that level.
And have they been consulted on the work program?
In regards to the work program, there are some areas which have been consulted on specifically, and there are some activities which are co-delivered with mana whenua, such as those by Makaurau Marae, for example. And so was there a third question in there?
Or are they only consulted on issues that are relevant to mana whenua specifically?
With the rohi within that, which they works generally. The work program itself is a bit of a, as Emma described, bringing together consolidation exercise of a number of specific works. So we don't have an integrated work program, but I guess in the future, if we look at the strategic planning and develop more integration across those work programs, we could consult with and work in partnership with mana whenua in a more collaborative way.
Thank you.
Sorry, through the chair, if I could add to that, in the work program being a consolidation of existing projects within council, so consultation and engagement delivery of these projects would have mana whenua consultation as part of that project development. And for example, the projects that Mara was referring to specifically around industry pollution prevention, those projects, for example, are co-delivered and co-designed with mana whenua, particularly in the Manurewa and Mangere Otahu areas. So the point to note is that while this report itself wasn't consulted with mana whenua, the projects that the work program describes generally are.
Right, Councillor Crum, you're going to move the...
Yes.
Oh, sorry, Mr Walcott, do you...
Yeah, just one question. Having been involved with IKHMG, which was partly sponsored with the Rodney District Council at the time, and the ARC, is there any kind of, I'm looking at the work plan, is there anything to kind of work somewhere collaboratively like that group did?
I think that's what they're doing.
Through you, Mr Chair, in terms of looking at the IKHMG as a model, I do know Richard Nahi has offered his services. He was involved in the IKHMG to come along to a future Manukau Harbour Forum meeting or hui to look at how the IKHMG model can work in the Manukau Harbour as well.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Crum, you want to move it as a seconder?
Yep.
Councillor Casey seconded. I think we've had a lot of discussion, but well,
no, I'd like to make a few points if I may. This is a very good news story for both local board and governing body collaboration and participation. And I wonder if I could just say a few words, but give away at least a minute or two of my time, Mr Chair, to allow Jill Naismith, as the chair of the Harbour Forum, to be able to say a couple of words, even if it's just a reference to a paragraph or two in your very well crafted letter, Jill. Jill works really hard to bring together 9 local boards representatives.
No, Councillor, we're into debate now. I can't have other people coming.
Can she not refer to a word or two, Mr Chair?
Mm-hmm. Well, public input. I don't think that's really proper. I mean, if we're going to start bending the rules to that extent, I mean, it makes the meeting, puts the meeting, as I said to Councillor Walker,
on more than one occasion.
Makes it difficult.
So, okay, I find that a real shame. And
it's not a shame.
Well,
it's
Mr Chairman, can
I
say that actually what we have done as practice around this table is had local boards sit at the table when there's an issue that actually involves them.
Well, I would have expected that, and in the context of, it's not debate, it's just a reference or a discussion. If you're not going to allow that, Mr Chair, then I will refer to
I support you, Denise.
to some of what Jill's written in the letter. Just a temporary glitch, Jill. All good. That this is one of the real unforeseen benefits of the amendment and the LTP that I moved and Councillor Filipina was second for, was getting to work with these people that you see up here. So to Emma, Jared, Jenny, Mara, and of course to Jill and the team. It's been a really fantastic few weeks, actually probably months now you think about it. And I've been very impressed with the way that they've undertaken this whole of council work program that you see, well, summary of activity that you see before you. It hasn't been easy at all for them to approach so many different divisions, departments and figure out what's going on, but it's something that's been sorely needed and forms the basis of how we can approach things going forward. I'll be really interested in the review of that 90 strategic plan, action plan. It's been a little while, since 1990, and to see how it might be relevant to us today. I just want to pick up on that 20K funding that they've had to basically scratch around and find. Without that and without the collaboration of departments, we wouldn't even be able to have a look at the possibility of hydro modelling. So something that staff are doing behind the scenes, essentially for our behalf, and I'm really grateful for that. Jill, in her letter, I just want to point this out because sometimes you pick up stuff that might be perceived about what we're trying to do here, and one of them is that is hydro modelling really the way to go? Some say yes, some say no. And Jill really rightly points out in her last paragraph that the forum are very well aware of potential limitations and expectations that could be up or down or all over the place. So I think that they're very sensible in their approach to this, and we're trying to adopt a sensible approach for the whole of that LTP amendment, given that the 400K identified is sitting there as a possibility. And I want to finish on the note that if we see this forward program and next steps that Mara's identified, we're going to have to at some point make decisions. If hydro modelling is the way to go and it results in data that we need to take pay very good attention to, then there will be decisions in regards to funding and reprioritisation of funding. So the journey essentially starts now for us to track with this issue and leave for now in very good, able hands the scoping, but decisions will come at some point. So again, my thanks. And is Maggie the dog?
Yep.
Somewhere around there too? So we've got the whole team here. Well done to you and to Jill Naismith and the whole Harbour Forum team.
Thank you. Councillor Lee.
Yes, and thank you very much, Mr Chair, and to the officers. And I want to commend the officers for their work and this report, and I fully support the recommendations. I just make one point, and that is in one of the presentations I heard almost tripping off the tongue, future co-management and co-governance. We live in a democratic society, and the public domain, of which the Manukau Harbour is normally governed in a democratic way. Now, the Crown or the government or Parliament of New Zealand may decide to take that approach. That is up to the Parliament, not us or council officers. And I would advise everyone to be careful in the way we use these words. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Walker. Wayne Walker.
Absolutely no comment.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Webster.
Thank you very much, and can I congratulate the staff and Jill and her team and everyone else is involved. And Mr Chairman, this draft program is something that I would like to see for some of our other large issues. I mean, just imagine if we had something like this for the Southern Initiative. You know, we really, I mean, this is the sort of thing that some of us have been looking forward to having. Everything on in a template that we can actually have a look at with particularly the outcome areas, the budget, the time frame. I mean, this is fantastic. I know it's a lot of work, but maybe we can take this as an example of what we should be doing with some of our other larger projects. So thank you very much.
Thank you. With that, I will put the motions, moved by Councillor Crum, seconded by Councillor Casey. I'll put the motions. Those in favour? Aye. Against? Declare that carried. Thank you. And thank the local board people for coming in. Thank you much. So we now move to item 12, which is updated. So Mr Kimpton, do you want to make any comments here? I just want to make a comment in relation to the item 1 on page 57. We are in a hiatus, I would say the word is there, whereas MB is saying it's a political decision, and I think the Minister's office is saying, no, it's an operational issue, go to MB. So it's made it quite an impasse, and but we're just trying to find a way through that at the moment. That's about how that is.
No further comment, and no further comment on this item 12. It's just an update on pending reports, and it's for information only.
Councillor Casey?
It's the next one.
Okay, well, with that, I'll move the recommendation.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Darby. I'll put that motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declare that carried. Thank you. And we go to item 13, which is information items. I'll move that we receive the summary of information.
I'll second that, Mr.
Seconded
Chair.
by the Deputy
Do
Mayor,
that.
Councillor Hulse. I'll put that motion. Those in favour? Oh, sorry, Councillor Casey.
It was just to update the update on the Rainbow Communities Advisory Panel. It's met twice. Its third meeting is on the 30th of November, which will be its first public meeting. At its first public meeting, the co-chairs will be confirmed and the work programme will be unveiled. So you're all welcome. It'll be 5:30, 30th of November, here in this room.
Thank you. Thank
History
you.
will be made.
Thank you for that update. I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Declare that carried. Thank you. And I think that concludes the meeting. Thank you. Now, we have a workshop at 2 o'clock.